What's the crack? What's the story? Welcome to another hobby hangout. All of you viewers out there. This one wasn't given really much notice, but welcome. What's the story? I'm Scarner or Dwayne if you know me from 40k or if you know me from Battletech. Welcome to my channel, Plasticraic Gaming, where it's generally just me doing hobby stuff if you've not watched it before. And welcome to today's guest, Dim, from your channel, The Hobby Git, which there is a link for in the description. Well, Jesus.
Yeah, there's so much content there.
Oh, yeah. Fucking the place is awash with content. Awash with it. So, I will be chipping away at some battle mechs today. I've actually been pretty busy this weekend, Dim.
Have you?
I have been busy. I've been gaming quite a bit. I've been getting quite a few games of Battletech in. And one of the forces I used yesterday against my mate Arthur was these three mechs. We normally play to about our club. I suppose it is a club at this stage that we started about a year ago. We normally play at about 7,500 battle value. And you can get like 4 to 5 mechs with varying sort of levels of capability with the pilots. So this is one of the 7,500 forces I have.
Is the chunky one a Turkina, is it?
Yes, the big boy is a Turkina. So this is sort of like the backbone of the force with its two Gauss rifles and two LRM-20s. I think it's the prime variant. There's a Nabori Nin I was using as well. I was using it later. I think it was Jihad era or Dark Age. And then there's the other, I think it was the one with the Gauss rifle and the two ER medium lasers. That's what I was using. So I'm going to get some priming on these guys. What hobby are you going to be doing yourself?
Well, I'm going to do some... oh, God, I picked up the rulebook specifically to show, and then I've put it down, and like, where the frick did it go?
I've been in that hobby room. Good luck to finding that rulebook again.
Oh, it's only an A5 rule. Oh, there it is. I'm painting up some drop zone commander stuff.
Ooh.
I do have my locusts handy. That's not a locust, that's a raven. I also have my locusts and my raven and my is that a catty? I think it's a catty.
Catapult, yeah. Sure, Josh will be well chuffed that you have one. I should start pulling me archers out just to run the right way.
I've gone with anything vaguely bipedal chicken leg plus bird sort of shaped thing. Seems to be the look I tend to go for in mechs.
You like the sort of avian look, is it?
Yeah, I guess so. I
mean, like,
I like the idea of, well, I can't remember. Oh,
the locust is pretty cool. I think you like the locust. You have a few of them.
Oh yeah. I've got two. I love locusts. I love locusts. Whenever I do demo games, I give my friends medium mechs and I take two locusts. And in essence, I'm being really mean because I run rings around them.
Here, let me introduce you to this game you have nothing to, you know nothing about. And it's like me. It's well,
they kill me eventually, but not before I tickle them a lot with shitty little small lasers.
I mean, like, I was teaching Drake how to play Battletech, and I was showing him how you use light mechs, where it's you zoom in with a high movement modifier, do a little bit of damage, and then run away again. You don't stick around, like, because if you've no movement mod, it's like, good luck to you.
Oh, you've got to be using your full movement. That's what I've learned with the small mechs.
Oh yeah, you don't stand still. I suppose that's how the game like changes quite a bit when the clan invasion happens, because pulse lasers come into effect, and that -2 to hit. It's like you don't want to be getting close to it. It really tends to hurt. I have been painting up when I've been getting the chance. This sort of tournament color. Now, I don't know if you can see it that well, but I've been trying to do a bit of edge highlighting. So this side doesn't have any, but I don't know if there's too much sort of washed out by the bright light. But there's.
I thought edge highlighting like this. I thought that edge highlighting mechs would be a lot harder than it is.
No, it's actually pretty
difficult. Even someone as inept as me can do it.
It's pretty. I can kind of see it there a little bit. I've been trying to be subtle with it, but I've been trying to paint up bits and pieces of a few people in the stream. PJS 1981 is saying, "Yo, what's up, PJS?" Mask Air is saying, "Have you got your choice of mech for Thursday selected?" it's a toss up between two. I'm either gonna bring this bad boy that I've been painting up, Banshee, giving him the once over. I'm starting to do a bit of edge highlighted on him, but I don't know if I'll be doing it on the stream. But this is this sort of ornament color scheme I have. So I have a Banshee, or I might go like full meme zone and go with the Orban mech with the hardened armor and the snub nose PPC just for the lols. So it's a toss up between these two. I
B.
know, yeah. How could you not love the Orban mech? It's a great
Fucking
model.
biased.
Like,
I'm so biased, but yeah.
Sculpt's brilliant. I mean, I'm heartbroken. I wanted to order. They have an Orby like fan club or an Orby. I don't know what it is. It's an Orby hoodie on the Catalyst website, and it's like $50. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go and order one. But the shipping's like $140, or I can't remember. The shipping's like crazy, man. I was a bit heartbroken. There. Sure, what can you do? Lorcan is like sup nerd, sup Lorcan. It's a story, bud.
Hey up, bud.
Model for advantages here. What's the crack, Kaiser or Johnny B? Even lads. Sci-fi's here. Oh, he's causing trouble. Scarnier, you do that if you played with me. Ah, yes, I suppose, yeah. Dublin Battletech. The 2C Clanner starts in the market Kickstarter should be your jam. Then Hobby Git, Locust and Jenna. Oh, okay, I get you.
Oh, I have been paid quite generously this month, and I am trying to pretend that the Kickstarter isn't happening.
Right.
Because it is perfectly timed for my good paycheck because I did overtime.
And over. I think of all the mechs you get.
It has to be put away for. I'm just going to wait till the regular Lance packs come out. I know I'll save money, but I mean,
being a responsible adult. Boo! Down with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Normally, I have the Vallejo air texture or the diorama effects or whatever they call it. Yeah, diorama effects. Normally, I've been sticking with using the white version just because it's easier to change the color on it. But I think I left that in my friend's house, so I will have to put some of this on. Ooh. I'll just color it over. Decided exactly.
Oh, look. Vallejo texture mates.
Ah, look, you've been converted to the cause as well.
I've not tried it yet.
What do you mean you've not tried it? It's great. I really like it for the Battletech because it's got a really fine grain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it'll probably work out quite nicely for these. Although, can you get like? Presumably, you can get other textures than the Earth. I presume you can get like. You
can get different colors.
I'm hoping you can get like a one that would work for concrete.
Yeah, but like that's up to you, really. Do you know what I mean? Where
is
the
drop zone command is a bit like kind of the cliche of fighting BattleTech is that quite a lot of it is battles in urban areas.
I mean, that's what we've used at conventions is actually. Do you know the drop zone commander?
City board.
The city board with the cardboard terrain, like.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's really, really good.
We used that, like the lads have it, so we tend to use that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's very, very cheap for what you get as well.
It's nice. It's a little bit on the big side for BattleTech, but it works. Like, you know what I mean?
I really struggle to understand the scale of BattleTech. I get kind of the gist of it, but
it's understandable because there's like mech scale and then there's map scale stuff. You know what I mean?
Because it's really odd. Because ostensibly it looks an awful lot like any other 10mm, but it's
yeah, but it's smaller than it. I think it's 1 in 285, so it's about 6mm ish.
Surely it's a little bit than 6 because like
they're just chunky boys. Like these are all like this. I think this is part of the problem is the previous sculpts weren't really in scale with each other. So you had like assault mechs. You had sculpts for assault mechs that were smaller than sculpts for like light mechs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be vastly different in both girth and height. So there was inconsistency there. Whereas
like a bit of girth.
Yeah, you know, everyone loves a bit of girth, you know yourself. But that I think that was part of the problem. Was that there wasn't consistency across the line, and some of the sculpts were a bit nah. You know what I mean? Hard to get a hold of. You're paying top notch for metal, and then if you don't like the sculpt, You know what I mean? It's
That's the
just
Ralpatha one, so you're on about something else.
nah, Real Party had some skew if ones, but I think it was early 2000s when Real Party stopped doing new sculpts. I mean, they still sell the current sculpts, so Real Party UK, you can still get the OG sort of sculpts off of them.
Oh, Ralpatha's got all sorts of stuff. They've even been buying up things, so they've got if you like your small scale gaming, there was a great little game called Critical Mass, which like one guy did in his shed, and just this really nice sci-fi stuff, and some of it would probably be applicable. I'll have to say, very Halo-ish. If you've ever played like the Halo computer games, look at some of the factions and like the tanks. I mean, it's hard to get the tanks. I don't know if the tanks are still distributed, but like the infantry and stuff look an awful lot like the Spartans, like the human faction.
What scale are they in?
I think they are 15 mil. I seem to recall. I do have some upstairs, so they're either 10 or 15. I think they're 15, to be honest, because I had like a bit of a 15 mil sort of buying.
Did you flirt with 15 mil for a while? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, I did. Well, I still intend to get back to it because I was thinking it's brilliant for skirmish if you want to do skirmish on a budget, because 15 mil is kind of like the apex of when detail stops mattering. I mean, I think the sweet spot is 28 mil, biased, but in 15 mil you can still have individuals. When you get below that, you can't. So 15 mil is a very good way of having
You can't have
a little
individuals.
skirmish. Well, with 10 mil, there's no point. I mean, it would be very, very hard to discern them. And also, most 10 mil sculpting tends to be not making individuals. It's about making regiments, because you play 10 mil so that if you have a squad that needs 100 miniatures, you're not breaking the bank to get 100 miniatures, even though most 10 mil regimental players never use that many on a base. They'll they'll get like the classic 4x3 centimeter or the 4x2 centimeter, which are like the
This is for historicals, is it like DBM
yeah,
and such?
yeah. They always use those bases. I've got some up there, but I'm going to spare everybody my belly. But I might grab some in a bit. But like,
These are the sort of squarish type of bases where
they're
it's
not a
sort
million
of
miles away from like this in scale, and you'll
Yeah.
have like 5 models on there. And there's a bunch of companies that do 10 mil, and the advantage, you can get pretty good detail, especially now with 3D printing coming along. But traditionally, people buy it because it's cheap. Like if you buy from something like Pendragon, which is like 10 miles away from me. It's somewhere in Middlesbrough. It's probably more than 10 miles, but it's not far. It's like half an hour to 45-minute drive.
We've never visited it. For shame.
Yeah, no. Well, it's well. Do you remember that twat I told you about? That I only ever went there with him.
Oh, okay, I get you.
Never really bothered. Partly because if I bumped into him there, I would probably punch his lights out. But that's another story.
We'll save that for another.
Yeah. But
So,
but
a
yeah.
few comments. Lorcan Nagel saying Augustine from Camo Specs gave out to me for not edge lighting my entry for the painting competition at the launch party. This is true. This is very true. And also sort of the gemming, as they call it. If you do like a lens, you'll do like the effect. So there's like a light flare. Look at me bald head as an example. There's like a light flare over here. This is
shiny face.
Yeah. Look at my shiny head. It's like light flare and sort of dark, and then yeah, exactly. I did like a bald head.
The David Cameron.
Jesus, stop saying that.
That's a really obscure joke. That's like nodding back to like Mock the Week in what 2010 something.
Okay, so Mock the Week from like 14 years ago. I'm sure there's people out there that will get it. I'm sure there is.
No, there isn't. It's just me. I mean, I amuse myself. It's fine.
Nick Carroll is here saying hello to all the fronds. What's the crack? I got the Mantic Kickstarter, but the Battletech one is too rich for my blood. It's understandable.
Oh, is that the new? That'll be the Dungeon Saga one.
I'll take your word on it. I really
Yeah,
haven't had eyes
it's
for
Dungeon
anything that isn't
Saga.
Battletech.
Dungeon Saga Origins. It's Mantic, so you'll get what you pay for, and it'll be decent, but it'll not be any better than that.
EJS is asking, is Battletech expensive to get into? No, mate. It's about 25 quid for a beginner box set if you've never really played war games before, and then Like the core box set, the Game of Armour Combat is like 65, 70 quidish. So
It can be a big initial spend depending on how much you want to get into it. But
if
like,
you've no self control, like any hobby, it can be
yeah,
expensive, but it doesn't need to be.
it's a bit like it's like all of the small scale ones, like BattleTech, even your Drop Zone Commanders, like stuff like that. It's like the price of it tends to be quite sort of low, especially if your experience of playing war games is GW. If it is, it's all stupidly cheap in comparison. If you do historical, you might be a little bit scandalized, but I don't think by too much. But like, what you can buy lance packs from companies with a little bit of discount and get them for like 20 quid, and you can run just the lance pack you bought, and that you'll be able to run that easily in many games and get different results.
Oh yeah, because the game's very proxy friendly, but I find like that the culture has shifted away from the way it used to be back in the day. So for instance, you don't really see people using the cardboard standees. Some of the
No,
guys from Catalyst themselves, they released a box that was just a load of cardboard standees, thinking, oh, people will think this is great, it gives them an opportunity to play loads of mechs or large forces. But it seems like the gaming culture tends to be miniatures. They want miniatures, which is understandable. Wanting miniatures to play the game. I mean, even in my local club, I find it tends to be folk use what they have in their collection, even though the game can be proxy friendly, like we've said it to them.
well, like
You can represent other things.
I do on occasion play the odd pen and paper RPG, but I never sustained it for too long because the reason I got into this kind of geeky hobby in the first place was to play with minis. So if the RPG doesn't have minis, it tends not to grab my attention as much.
I get you,
Whereas
yeah.
these days, you've got an awful lot of D&D people. They are using minis all the time because it's very, very easy to get a crap ton of STLs for monsters, and you've got like companies that will, well, the D&D people think they're getting a bargain, but they're often getting gouged. The likes of Hero Forge, for instance. But you can get like just about anything. Like I backed a Kickstarter just because it was stupid cheap when I was flush.
Image of you
And
just
I've
like
got like
throwing the pound notes out there. Fucking yeah,
I've got
miniatures.
like I've got like 500 STLs of various D&D creatures.
And how many have you printed?
None.
Gee.
But what I did do is give the files. I haven't given them all yet, but I've started giving them to my friend who A is much more into like your D&D than I am, and B his printer's going basically every day.
Oh, so he's
And
actually printing stuff.
Hmm.
I know the feeling. There's a
Well,
printer over there that needs to be fixed.
I stopped because my sinusitis got bad, and I didn't want to make it any worse.
I,
That's why.
I found that as well when I was printing with the PLA. Is like I'd noticed there was a tickle in me throat because I was printing in the same sort of room, lobbying in. It's like, yeah, you need to sort of have like a ventilated room, little room all to itself. I mean, you've got like a little room like that you could stick a printer in. Do it.
Yeah,
Like a little
potentially.
enclosure for it.
Well, I was even thinking like upstairs. I've got like a landing, and I've got like a little desk there that I never use. So I was thinking maybe even sticking it on or underneath the desk, and then just like buying one of them cheap, like filter tent things. The plastic tents.
The ones that the weed growers used to grow their weed in. I think
Yeah,
that's yeah, that's
I
perfect
mean,
for your 3D printer.
I'd
Actually,
definitely get a visit from the fuzz, but they wouldn't find anything illegal. So
like, what in the hell is this? Ah, it's just me 3D printer. Gov, you know yourself.
yeah, and then just have like the exhaust. You get like a plastic exhaust and just stick it out the window whenever I print.
Yeah,
And
the
just
neighbors
print
won't
and
find that
hang on.
suspicious at all. At all, they'll be like, "What in the
Yeah,
Jesus
well,
is
they
going?"
can find it as suspicious as they
And start
like.
getting calls through. No, you sell yeah, what are you selling, bud? Resin. Oh, so funny. Right, there's a few more comments in the comment section. Nick Carroll is saying, I use AK concrete texture paint and the Vallejo asphalt black lava for most of my light and dark project road textures. There you go. There's some notes for future reference there, Dim.
Mm.
Battletech we're saying. For about Dublin, there's a local friendly group in the provide you all and play to decide that you take the plunge. That's true. We have our games on in the Clonsilla Inn. The next one's on the 20th. Gonna have a little tournament. Gonna be some prizes.
Ah, shite. I was going to start that fella.
Yeah, 30 to 50 quid could get you into it, yeah. Figure out what you want.
I mean, the only thing you're really going to spend money on if you get really super addicted to it, well, there's two ways to get addicted to Battletech. One is I've got to have all the lance packs, and then there's I've got to have all the books. And if you do go that route, you can spend a lot.
But it's not Pokemon, mate. You don't have to catch them all.
Don't need
Like,
it.
you
Nah,
don't
you
have
really
to catch
don't.
them all.
You really don't. And like, I mean, it's sometimes nice to get the technical readout books.
Oh, they're nice. They are nice. Do you know what they're really? I only realised what they are. They're great.
You can
like,
probably get
coffee table books. Do you know that?
Yeah, yeah.
They really are.
But if you really want like the readouts to play in the game, you just grab them online and print them.
Oh, but everything's online. So there's like, even for force building, I use Master Unit List quite a lot. You just look up the variant you want, and it'll have the battle value. And there's like a force builder that you can use for when you're putting the force together, and you go from there. Like, there's some great online resources. Sarna.net is their wiki. So I like to go onto Sarna and actually read what each of the variants has weapon wise, and then look it up. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're looking at a mech and you're like, oh, I don't know if I like it or not, and then you can look through the variants of it, read what they are and when they were developed and stuff like that, and then you can build a force. You know, go from there and get your record sheets, print them out, and away you go. As you can tell, I started investing in more printer ink, which isn't cheap, but I mean, it's invaluable when it comes to Battletech. Having a printer really helps.
Well, especially if you want like good terrain, it solves your terrain problem immediately, basically.
I was just even talking about a standard like inkjet printer, which
brings
me on to another note. So, with this Banshee I've been painting up, right? The way I want to do it up color scheme wise is it's a tournament color that I do. It's like green, white, and orange. So it's like, you know, the tricolour of the Irish flag, hence the Irish flag, whatever. Okay. But these are the county colours. So it's like Dublin, that's for me, Dublin colours. And I want to get like cities, you know, Dublin, Clay, sort of the three towers or the three castles on fire. So the county crest, and then like the family sort of coat of arms. So my family coat of arms, the colour is black and white, so that's why I did the checkered stripe up there, and it's kind of orky as well. So I wanted to get those symbols done, so I've actually bought some decal paper for inkjet printers off of Amazon. Hopefully they'll be coming soon, and the idea would be to put like the family crest and the county crest, and then I'll do up a few of them like that. Maybe throw some people in, throw some pilots in mechs of people that I know, and name them, and then paint up their county and then like their family crest for when I go to tournaments. And I think I'll do one of every mech that I come across in these sort of colors, so I have those mechs in those tournament colors. Do you get me? It's a bit fun. It's a bit interesting. This is the Banshee I've been painting up. It's the one I've been putting effort into. Probably take this one. He's saying, "Wow, man, it's
that fella seems really tall compared to the other."
Yeah, he is, because it's a Banshee, man. Like he's a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
It's big. What is he? 85 tons? I can't remember off the top of my head. He's an assault mech. Like, he's not.
I'm also gonna start throwing color on my mechs. So my stuff. So I'm going to switch to the hobby camera. So
I thought you were going to say there you're going to start throwing shade there for a second. I was like, oh Jesus.
No.
Oh Jesus. Oh, all right. This is your called.
This is my viewer discretion thing.
You sparing them from your builder's visage. Is that what it is, or your builder's physique?
That's absolutely it.
Nail hit firmly on the head. Some of us have all the lance packs and all the books. This is true, Lorcan. Some of us do. But not all of us. Because some of us aren't insane. Yeah, I normally, what I've started doing with the basic materials, I've switched over to white. Just the plain white one. Originally, I was using this sort of dark texture, but then I figure out actually I want to have it. It's just a neutral color, so I can decide what it. If I want to make it brown for dirt, or if I want to paint it up for green, grass, or whatever. You know what I mean? I was better off sticking with a neutral color, so I'll actually dark earth on. But I probably should actually start experimenting, especially since this is supposed to be an urban lance, so a lance that fights in urban warfare, these 2 hunchbacks and the 2 victors that I have. But I still haven't finished painting. I really need to get the finger out in that regard. Bit of a lazy bugger when it comes to painting. Love playing the game, but painting, I've always been a bit slow with it. But I suppose that's the beauty of it with Battletech, is you're only painting up 4 miniatures. You're not trying to do a whole...
Being lazy with painting, what's that like?
No, man. Glacial pace painting is what I should have called this channel. Like, sweet Jesus, like... But this is the thing I love about Battletech as well. It's like, to get it force painted up, it's like 4 miniatures, 5 miniatures, 3 miniatures, It's not as daunting. You're not staring down the barrel end of, a mob of 30 orc boys, and that's just a section of your army. Not even the whole thing, like.
Oh, can I answer this new question? This PGS is asking, do you have to paint all units? No, there are no in-game points for whether your models are painted or not.
Yeah, you don't have to paint them. But it's
throwing no shade at all.
No shade at all. Like, the incentive for me is that it looks nice, or if a specific mech performs really well, I feel kind of bad if it's only in black primer, Like, if a specific mech performs well on the battlefield, it's like he's earned his paint job. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's no it doesn't have to be painted. Like, it doesn't even have to be the correct miniature as long as you're using the right record sheet. So it's it's not a WYSIWYG game. You're not going to have people judging you because your miniatures aren't painted. It's not that sort of community. I mean, some people do amazing paint jobs, but no, it's not very judgmental, I find. Very sort of open community that the game has. Very proactive, very positive. Yeah, I've found it's been a very positive experience. Not that I've had overtly negative experiences with other communities. It's just...
Oh, I have.
I find this one fairly positive. But you know what you need to do then, Dim? You know what I mean? Start a Battletech group in your local community.
Yeah. That sounds like effort.
It is effort. This is the thing. It is effort. But the payout is worth it. Trust me.
Yeah.
Get to play Battletech. Who doesn't love Battletech? Those Battletech RPG movie prototypes, they have great promo saying I went back to Dungeons and Lasers 5 art minis. Oh, this is on Kickstarter, is it?
Yeah, they Dungeons and Lasers do some nice things. We've got some obscenely cheap things, that are kind of interesting for the hobby. Mostly they're aiming themselves at, unsurprisingly, the D&D market, which quite a lot of stuff these days is.
I mean, it's a big market, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, it'll stay stay a big market so long as Wizards of the Coast don't fuck it up.
I mean, they went through their whole debacle. I'm not into D&D or invested in it, so I'm only peripherally aware of any flack that sort of...
Whenever you hear the phrase in a corporate setting under-monetized, clench your buttocks really strong, because bullshit is inbound.
Corporate shenanigans.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's not spread. But have you managed to get many games in yourself? Like, what have you been playing recently, Dim?
I've been playing an overwhelmingly large amount of board games, but in the sense of the tabletop games with miniatures, pretty much my entire forays have been TT combat related. So it's been drop zone, which is what I'm painting now. I'm painting drop zone commander stuff. I went for I'm using the resistance, which is the overwhelmingly orkiest faction.
I mean, when I did pay attention to it back in the day when it first came out, I do remember impressed with the skill buses and stuff like that and the technicals that the resistance had.
Yeah, I'm painting those up now. I've got like the bus here. The buses here. They like to chip like God knows what. But I've got them there.
And what are the
And
big
then,
turrets? The big turrets in the middle, do they sit on the buses or what are they? See the ones with 3 people in them or whatever?
yeah, they sit on top, and I've got it magnetized. You benefit quite a lot from magnetizing drop zone stuff, but you can also have it with, where is it? Oh, there. Which I've also magnetized. Bombs, so you can have a remote control boom bus.
Boom bus.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't think it's called a boom bus, but it's what I call it.
Should have a shed load of speakers sticking out the side of it.
Yeah.
What's the big robot in the middle? What's the quad?
That
bot?
is one of the HQ things. It's called
Or the resistance?
yeah, it's a Pizarro Hazard Walker. And it's snippy. And those claws are not actually technically combat in the game. They're technically a ranged attack, which means you can, as I did in one of my games, snippy snip a plane out of the sky.
Cool.
Which was quite funny. But yeah, it's an interesting game. I've played it quite a bit, and I also played Rumble Slam as well. Was the other one I was playing.
Oh, that's that sort of wrestling game, isn't it?
It's
That,
a fantasy. It's a fantasy wrestling game that is fun. I wouldn't say it blew my mind. It's a laugh. It is not remotely balanced in any way, shape, or form. I don't necessarily think I care too much about it, but I have the unfortunate side effect of, because all of my people are largely either GW people or XGW people, they don't seem to understand the idea that you don't have to win a game.
oh, okay, I get you.
So it's they are very much delighted in the fact that there are inequalities that are obvious. Whereas I'm looking at things of like modeling projects, and I even had a thought of, I had a sort of daft idea for making my own wrestlers for it with like rules and matches. Because I had an idea that I wanted to work with, and I've got like an old GW, well, I say an old GW kit, but like a semi-recent GW kit that I wanted to convert up. But there's like a Goliath set that gives you something that's like a Flanderized version of the Bloody Leader and Flanderized version of the Jews.
So this is Goliath from Necromunda, is it?
Yeah, Goliath's from Necromunda, and the sort of like the big, I think they're called stimmers or something, but they're like big fellas, and they've got these like, I don't think I've got the box handy, which is a shame.
So you're using it. So I take it that the wrestling game then is like 28 mil-ish. Well,
oh yeah, it's 28 mil. I think it's even true scale 28 mil. So it's a little smaller than your 40k minis, but they would probably fit in okay. And there's also a like a ratty faction, so I'm trying to dig out my old Skaven stuff. I'm going to try and make my own fighters. Not because I'm trying to save money or anything, and I think the minis are perfectly fine for the price that you pay.
but you want to get some use out of stuff you already own, yeah.
Well, partly that, but also, where's the fun in using things that are supposed to look how they're supposed to look? Where's the fun in that? I want to convert some stuff up. I've been itching for like a hobby project again. Like, it's one of the downsides of Drop Zone so far is it doesn't seem like there's much hobby in it. Although I do
Surely
have
if they're the like a scrapyard sort of thing, you can do a bit of hobby with them. You could do a bit of jumping.
In the background, there's like, because the resistance are basically, they're sort of semi-allied with the main human faction, which is like, I think they call the UCM, I think. And they come in various flavors. Like they have like a unit they call the veterans, and they can, their equipment depends on you know, like what their loadout is. Like you can specifically get ones that are scourge resistance because like they've fought Scourge exclusively, which is like one of the evil alien factions. Well, the evil alien
Bad guy.
faction. They really are the bad guys of the setting. And I thought about, oh, well, I could run with that. So I was looking at ways to, because they've brought out like a big thing, which is like a mega hovercraft for the game, which is it's absolutely bloody huge. Like it can hold like 4 of these buses, both physically and in terms of the game.
Mm.
And probably a bit more actually, if I think about it. I'm not 100% sure. But one of its loadouts involves using looted Scourge plasma weaponry.
Oh, sweet.
So I was thinking, well, why don't I model more of my stuff to have looted Scourge tech on it? So that's one of the things I've been thinking about. But it is learning a whole new set of skills because it's like I've never tried converting in 10 mil before. I've probably got myself in more trouble than I really wanted.
Yeah, I found that with painting like really small scale infantry as well, your standard approach to painting miniatures has to be adjusted.
Yeah.
Because they're so small, it's like, right, okay, you're only really picking out details you want to pop. So it's like face or visor, gun, boots. And then the rest of them's just green.
Well, the great thing is that like liquid talent continues to be liquid talent, so you just let the ink do most of the work for you, and you normally
Or
laugh
the
at.
washes or whatever, yeah. Because that's what I do is I use like the Vallejo model wash on them. And just pick out the metal afterwards. Even though, technically, military weapons are blackened, but you want them to pop.
Yeah.
Suspension of disbelief from, if giant stompy robots can be a thing in the future, I'm pretty sure shiny metal guns can too. Just makes them stand out.
Yeah. What was I going to say about that? Oh yeah. So the Rumble Slam stuff.
Yeah.
I've got like a kit of the those Goliath stimmers, and like they've got like the stimmers got like these weird boots on their feet that almost. I think they're supposed to sort of reinforce their legs and let them sort of. But they reminded me of the live action Super Mario Brothers film.
Oh yeah.
They look a lot like them. So I was thinking, oh, I could take these 2 Stimmer models and I could convert them up to make them look a little bit like the Super Mario Brothers. And I could do like a wrestling team built around that and then use some esches to make like some of the female characters from the franchise.
Man, I remember that film coming out when I was a kid and the hype behind it, and then just did not materialize at all.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great film.
I barely remember any bits of it. Like,
It's
I
bad.
barely
No,
remember.
it is objectively bad, but at the same time, I think it's also a great film because I think it has too many good elements within it. Like the cast is good in spite of itself. It suffers from the same brilliant predilections that the Street Fighter film has, which is that it's got too good of a cast to be entirely shit.
Oh, Street Fighter. Yes. All right. Yeah, I remember that one well.
Because Raul Julia, like what in his last performance, just going, "This is stupid. I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to do a Shakespearean level of chewing the scenery," and it was marvelous, absolutely marvelous. And if it wasn't for his performance, that film would be agreed upon as the worst film ever made, instead of a lot of people saying it's the worst film ever made when it's very far from it.
I mean, there's a lot. Wasn't there? Van Damme was in it, and Kylie Minogue and stuff.
Yeah, it was a little too many of the cast taking it too seriously, though, which was a bit of a shame. But it's really, really good. There's all sorts of stuff. The thing that kind of freaked me out is the guy who was like Zangief,
Yeah.
like the Russian one. Be careful saying that word at the moment. He was he's I think he was the the recent remake of Texas Chainsaw.
No, I've not seen the recent remake.
I've not watched it. I'm not a big horror person, but apparently he's the murdery guy.
You're wandering away from the mic, but I'll take your word on it.
He's the murdery guy. There we go. And it was yeah. Need to dash off and get what you call these shortly.
What you call these?
Ming Na Wen, yeah. Lorcan's on about Ming Na Wen, yeah.
Is that the chick?
Yeah. Well, she's if you watch the Mandalorian, she's the assassin girlie in that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and she is in Agents of Shield as well. She's in loads of stuff at the moment. But yeah, and presumably she's in Everything Everywhere at Once. I still need to get around to watching that because it's got one hell of a cast and everybody's raving about it.
Not even heard of it.
It cleaned up at the Oscars.
All right.
And of an Academy Award, like a couple of the other awards.
Well, now I understand why I haven't heard of it. Grant.
But it was quite good because it's harking the return of the guy who used to play like Short Round and
Oh yeah, that dude. Yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah.
well, what was his character called in the Goonies? Was it just Gadget? It was something like that.
I can't remember, but I do remember the character he played because he had all the little gizmos and stuff. He was I remember him being like my favorite character as a kid because you wanted to be him. Like, you know, he had all the cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, apparently, I was watching like an interview with him. Apparently, when after the Goonies, he was very delightfully not bullied. Oh. Instead, all of his friends were like they played the Goonies, and when they played the Goonies, he had to play that character. So it's just like, oh, that's pretty cool. They were playing the Goonies, and they had the actual Gadget or whatever I can never remember what his character's called.
It was Data in the Goonies. Yeah, you're right.
Data,
yeah.
That's it. I couldn't remember the name.
Thank you, Lorcan.
Yeah. Outgeeked. Nice.
You're in good company tonight, don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. That's some of the Urban... That's the Urban Lance. So I rock 2 Victors. I need to finish their paint job off and do it. You know what? I might actually do their metals tonight. I started doing the metals. I do 2 Hunchbacks and 2 Victors. Now, originally, I was doing the ones with AC20s with them all. But I literally played a couple of games where I got like 2 or 3 AC20 hits all game. And I think all the pilots are like, they're all like 3-4 pilots or 3-5 pilots. So I got sick of AC20s. So I turned the Hunchbacks into the 4Ps with the, what is it? It's like 8 medium lasers and a small laser, I think. And I found like the combat effectiveness of those guys are actually really good, surprisingly. It's just like a laser shotgun. It's like, oh, I've just hit you with 7 medium lasers. There's like 35 points of damage or whatever, you know? They're fun. Especially because people don't expect it, you know? And they're great at killing elementals, you know? Infantry bases or, you know, elementals where they're all like, oh, you know, I can absorb 10 points of armor and then another hit. It's like, that's grand. I'll just keep shotgunning these laser shots at you. I'll kill some stuff eventually.
Yeah. By the way, Lorcan, I think I was getting myself mixed up, very unfortunately, but I just assumed she was in it because almost everybody, almost everyone in Hollywood who's Asian seems to be in it. But I was thinking principally of Michelle Yeoh, I assume.
India.
But I know she's I don't know if she's the protagonist or not. I need to get this film watched. I need to stop talking about it and actually watch it. But I've heard it's really good. So
yeah, finally pulled all the Alpha Strike X out of stored. Loads mix. Too many, some would say.
But yeah, anyway, just to finish this anecdote off of the wrestlers that I was on about, like I decided I would do the Super Mario Brothers dudes using those Goliaths and then stuff like that. And I mentioned it at my club. And one of the people who reacted was just like, I don't know if I would play you in that because you'll just be making them to win. just be making them to give them cheesy rules. And I was just like, oh, just.
I suppose there is that sort of there's a conditioning within gaming, and I think it comes from people min-maxing and taking the piss. Like it's understandable because.
Oh
like,
yeah,
the way I'd view Battletech is like if you're gonna custom make a mech, you kind of have to. It's good manners to sort of ask beforehand. You're like, oh, I'm going to use this custom mech, or show the person you're going to play the sheet that you've made, just so there isn't like, oh, gotcha moments, because you don't want to be halfway through a game expecting something to be one way and then it's actually super optimized and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. You know what I mean? You want the fun taken out of it. Whereas if you know you're coming up against something that's optimized, you can sort of prepare yourself for a better game then.
Oh, it's on Prime. Oh, I need to get it watched. Didn't realize it was on Amazon Prime.
What's on Prime?
Everything everywhere at once.
Mm.
Oh God.
Where in the suite? Oh, I've lost the miniature. There's a miniature I had on my desk specifically. I don't know where the hell I've put it now.
How have you managed that?
Oh, dude, you don't want to see it. You really don't want to see me desk. It's a fucking... Woo! It's stacks of books, papers, and it's literally just mechs there's mechs everywhere. Printers, like if I want, you know the way you like when you buy a printer, it'll have like a top part where it's the scanner as well. It's like there's no opening the scanner. There's no opening the scanner. It's like paint, printer, ink, mechs, like blister packs of mechs. I think this is the AR or AT, some of the Ironwind metals, but some of the new sculpts. Yeah, there's mechs everywhere.
Don't mind that. Hey, Essex. And hey, Dyson.
Hey, Decent here. Hello, gentlemen. Essex here. Storyboard.
I'm sick of licking my paintbrush. I'm going to go get some kitchen roll now.
Asked for her. EEAAO was great. What is that? Yo. Look at all the mix. But yeah, the Banshee's a tall boy. Got base material on. So this is like a little action or force for playing with. So like an Abori Nin, a Torquina, and an Uller. I played against Arthur the other night, and holy Jesus, when the Torquina hits with the Gauss rifles, or the Gauss rifles, or Arthur's, is Atlas took a Gauss to the head or a Gauss to the head, whatever way you want to. Or can I say, I'm currently stopping the scanner bit on my printer from opening. A bag of just replaced ink cartridges, a bag of cotton wool balls, a bag of weapon effects for Transformers, and a Transformer. Yeah, you know what I mean? They don't stay clear. Like, there's loads of stuff on me printers, like elementals, there's like empty whiskey glass, there's like cards from the last clan. The Heavy Star? Well, I can't remember the one. Whatever one has the Torquina in it. Because I gave Steve-O the only Torquina I had. Because that's what he wanted to use in his start.
The bad man wanted to just Torquina. Who fucking
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, I think he got like a Torquina. He got a Supernova. He got another couple of really big chunky boys. And then when I built the force to fight against it, he was surprised he was so outnumbered. I'm like, dude, you've got like these walking tanks. I need to get that battle report up, actually. I think it's the Kingfisher.
What battle report needs to get up is freaking the one that Dread's supposed to be freaking
well, I mean, that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for Dread to do that one to give my one context, but it's like...
I think we may need to take bets on what's out first, the new edition of 40k or the game that we played in the previous.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I mean, I love Clint's football video. That was pretty good.
Oh, that was a great game.
Oh yeah, looked at, man. The stadium is class, especially for what it's made out of.
I
Like
still hate second season, but you can't.
now come on now. You
It's
don't
not
need to be
no,
bitter
no,
all
no.
the time.
It's not going to be a bad game when you've got two of the most fun teams.
Mm.
You're not going to have a bad game no matter which edition of it you play. It was always
And you're
going to be
playing in a
game.
stadium like that, like it's just.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh look, there's the locust out of the Alpha Strike
I was
box.
a,
You see,
I
look
was
at
a
Alpha Strike.
little gutted with myself that I didn't get any of my teams finished because we just used Clint's stuff. But
I mean, you
it
weren't
was
the only
still
one. I
great.
was supposed to get stuff done. Didn't. I was focusing on painting 40k stuff. And I found it funny. I was the only one using like a horde army. They're very much not in vogue anymore. I noticed that.
Well, it's because the system they've made can't handle numbers.
Clint is saying, I reckon 11th will be out before Dread's bat rep.
I mean, it's a safe bet.
Yeah, that's pretty safe bet. All right, I'll have to torment them. Try to get the ball rolling again.
He might be watching. He might have just been about to post up, and they were giving out about him.
Like that Dread bollocks. I mean, nothing we wouldn't say to his face.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bad.
Well, if the video ever gets up, people will see. You see, he gets a lot of shit throughout the whole of the meet.
Oh yeah. Oh Jesus, Captain Slow. Holy.
Oh my god.
What was I doing again? Oh, what about this? Oh, I'm thinking. It's like, mate,
He
you've
was-
had the
he
whole
was
fucking.
second guessed. He second guessed every decision that he made, and the amount of time it took in deployment, even before he'd started with the spliffs, of just kind of like, where am I going to put this battle wagon? Such a perfectionist little prissy thing, and then halfway through the game, he's like, "You know what, lads? You're probably right. These things probably are a bit too big."
The bases. Oh my god.
The bases. Oh my god.
The biscuit bases, man. Fucking.
Well, he wouldn't be told. He wouldn't be told. He wouldn't be told that they were on two big bases. He had like orcs on 40 mils and stuff like that.
Think of like, I suppose for anyone watching, think of like orc miniature bases being like Oreo cookies. That's probably the closest description I could give you. They were just
Thing was, right, is do you remember before we went, he was giving out about, he's like, oh, I made these and I put them up and I made them available or something. And nobody's buying them and I don't know why. And then he turned up and we were like, we know why. Those aren't bases, they're fucking coasters.
huge. Oh, they're fucking huge. I was like,
Digestive biscuit bases.
yeah, digestive biscuit bases. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Fucking. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I was like, what? Are you getting ready for 12th edition, bud? Fucking hell.
I mean, yeah, he's way ahead on skill creep, so he's got that goal for him.
Definitely. Oh, that was a good one though. That was fucking good weekend. Are we doing it again this year? What are we doing?
I fucking hope so.
Crack.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and get him persuaded one year so that we can do like Gorkamorka. Like just do a campaign of Gorkamorka for the weekend when we go.
Ah, bollocks to that. I'm gonna bring a load of fucking mechs and make you all play Battletech, you pricks.
Well, we've got to do something orky because it's an orky channel, you know. But
I mean that as well, yeah. But you're playing Battletech.
Oh yeah, I'd play Battletech. I know that.
Yeah, well, I know your arm doesn't require much twisting.
Yeah. What I need though is more locusts. I want more locusts.
Want more locusts? Just like a horde of them.
Presumably, you could take probably like 4 or 5 with half decent pilots.
Oh yeah, you definitely could.
Maybe even 6 at a push, depending on how decent you want the pilots to be, right?
Yeah, because like, so your piloting skill increasing will multiply the battle value of the mech. But if the starting battle value of the mech is like pretty low because it's a locust, so it's a light mech with like, depending on what you give it, like some of the later era ones I think get a bit more exotic, but even still you're not going to be paying stupid points for them, you know. You could easily have 4 or 5 of them with like 2-3 pilots. Pretty reasonable, you know.
Nice.
I mean, if anything sneezes on them, they're probably dead, but so if I was saying play Battletech with Death Ray. Orkin is saying, Dwayne, you can bring the Alpha Strike box and aces, play it in the corner. No. Ain't in the corner, me. Front and center. You know what I really should do is get the finger out and like do some orky sort of crossover stuff. It's like if orcs landed in the Battletech universe, or there's a pocket dimension or whatever, and just yeah, I think orcs would actually get on really well in the 40 or in the Battletech universe, because it's all about salvage, like all about the salvage. This is a great little kit, by the way. This Tamiya basic tool set is great, especially if you're going hobbying in your mate's place. You have to pack everything up in a bag and.
Be interested to see how the clans reacted to the orcs.
Oh, I think the clans would fucking love it, because they're literally like alien scum they can just gun down. I think the clans would be in their element.
Until they got outclassed, and then they'd be very upset.
I don't think they'd be outclassed. Definitely be outgunned at some stage. I think like the orcs would feed off of the clanners on their tech, like.
Well, I do think that one of the ways that orcs often end up winning the day, when they do win the day in 40k, is because they're underestimated.
Oh yeah, vastly so. Yeah. Orcs are always.
And I mean, a lot of my best games in 40k in the game itself have been when people have decided that there was no way my army could do anything particularly well. Granted, I will say that was more possible in editions where it wasn't all about army lists.
Well, speaking of editions, like this new edition, they've changed the stat or something, or I don't know. I've been peripherally aware of what's going on. I haven't really.
Very, very half-heartedly with morbid curiosity, and that's about it. Because I am definitely done, and I don't care. I don't care if it's good or bad.
Yeah, I'm not too pushed about it myself.
I expect it will be somewhere in the middle. It won't be offensively bad, but it won't be the best it could be.
I mean, like, I'm wondering what changes people are hoping for. Like, a lot of, I've been watching the Modeling for Advantage lads, and Kaiser's been, talking about the scenarios and objectives. And he was saying how, like, that side of it really needed to change, because even when he was trying to teach.
Doctorate.
Huh?
You needed a doctorate in how to get the points right.
Yeah, well, he was saying like how he was trying to teach like the kids, because the school club or whatever it is, the thing that they do, and it was just really impossible to fucking get kids to play it, like, you know what I mean? So it's,
yeah,
I think that's kind of that's not a good sign if you're not getting the newer generations in and playing the game. Like,
well, GW kind of forgot what the main thing that, well, there's a lot of things that turn people away from like 7th edition, but like the pay to win was probably the main thing. But another one of the things was just how much faff you had to do to start the game. And all they've really done is stick an awful lot of the faff at the end. But half of the faff is still there at the front. And I was very skeptical when people were talking about these secondaries. There was an awful lot of optimism about it. And the first thing I thought was, all that's going to happen is that the min-maxers are going to quickly figure out which ones are most effective for their lists. That means that they can literally probably score those secondaries by deploying, and they will take those.
I mean, it sounds like a good concept. I don't think it was executed well. But then again, like,
it'll never be executed well. And I know this is.
I played a couple of games of it, and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't really my thing, but like, I think it worked when we did our Warboss meetup, because we did our own sort of custom scenario. You know what I mean?
Well, not even that. We did custom rules. We modified the rules quite heavily, and I think as a result, we just had a better time. But I just think there's quite an awful lot of the problem that GW has now is the mentality of the people who are playing the game. And
but like, how much of the game is that though? Like, how much of the game is what we did the last time I played 40k, where it's mates getting together?
I definitely think it's more than they realise, but I definitely think they don't think there's much of us left. And I think the problem you have to a large extent is a lot of the people who go in to work for Games Workshop. A lot of those people were the people who were playing editions of like 5th, 6th and 7th when it was all about crunch. It was all about army lists. It was all about army list culture and tournament culture. And they've gone into that basically writing for themselves, really. And as a result, they've alienated an awful lot of people because the reality is that GW is a very broad church, and now they're not.
Just I don't know. I think
The-
that's the problem. Is I don't know anymore.
They're not going to get them back. They aren't going to get them back. They are going to win over their current fans who are starting to be a bit disenfranchised, but want to still like it. They'll win those people back easily.
I mean, that's all they really have to.
The people who, yeah, exactly. But the people who are skeptical are probably not going to come back. I mean, like the fact of the matter is like, let's just be generous and assume that 10th edition is the best war game system ever written in the history of man. It doesn't matter because in 3 years they're going to change it. And the second I had that realization, I was like, nah, keep it, mate. I don't want it. The only thing they can do for me to make me think that I might want to keep in it is if they make all of the rules at all times freely available. If I can have access to my units, my codex, and my points, and the core rules for free, I will play it.
So you're saying Dame's blaming the youth of today?
No, I'm blaming. Well, yeah. Fuck them.
Oh, I love it.
I'm not. I'm blaming the youth of the noughties.
So us, basically, us. You're blaming us.
No, the generation after us. Fuck them.
Clint is saying the problem is the majority of the players are the mates in garage gaming, just aren't very visible outside their own groups. I'd say that's very true. I think there's an awful lot of that happens in gaming because I found that when we actually started our sort of club for playing Battletech, that there was loads of players locally to the area, and there's loads of players would be popping up then because we'd be advertising it. We made like a Facebook group, we printed off posters, we put them in like comic book shops, in modeling shops, you know, anywhere that would really let us, that was sort of geek orientated or whatever. You know, and then people realize, oh, wait a minute, there's like a guy in the same housing estate as me who's into this hobby or whatever, you know what I mean? There's quite a lot of players have popped up, and it's very surprising. I find that a strange phenomenon, like where people will be into a game, they'll be doing their own thing and they'll play. Maybe they might have a passive interest themselves, or they just play with their mates, and then that's it. Like, it's a little pocket. So there's all these little pockets of people that the only reason you know they kind of exist is that like product is being bought in store. You know what I mean? Like, that was the only sign that like we were aware that there was other people outside of our little group that were into Battletech, is that like some of the stores that stocked Battletech at the time, the box sets would be bought up, so it's like they're out there somewhere. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by like there's more than they think.
Yeah.
The problem is they're like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to borrow from Al Murray, but they're kind of like, they're effectively the silent majority.
Well, like yeah, that's the same with any situation, though.
Yeah.
The majority is always kind of silent. You know?
Yeah.
That's the same in all aspects of life. Most people are too busy with their life to delve deep enough into something, you know, regardless of what it is. It's like they've got better things to do, you know. They have kids, they're married, they have bills to fucking pay. It's like they want their hobby to just be a few hours of relaxing or painting or gaming with their mates, and they literally don't have time, I'd reckon, to be arsing around or worrying about stock prices or directions companies are going in. You know?
I am incredibly envious of people who can do that, who can actually, you know, live a regular life away from this bullshit and not be obsessive about it all the time. I would like that life. I'm never going to get it, but I would like that.
Well, I suppose it's just whatever you aim for. If you aim for things to be a certain way,
I don't think it. Well, I think yeah, but like I think to an extent, like there's
like, even if you're obsessive about things and you have like obsessive compulsions about things, you can decide what you obsess over. You know?
I don't know about that. I mean,
yeah, you do. You have free will, man. Come on now.
Free will's an illusion. Lunchtime
No,
double.
no, no, no. It's out there, man. It's out there. Just
Free will is an illusion.
Jesus. Have to get you the Simon copy of 1984. So. Oh, I love it.
One of my friends, like one of the gags he likes to do. I mean, I shouldn't probably say this in case it.
Well, maybe do you think you should be saying it live on a Hobby Hangout now? One of these, you know.
He likes to autograph hotel Bibles.
The autograph.
All the best, love God.
That is very British humor. That is very British humor. Very British humor. I mean, I wouldn't have the fucking gall, but you know. Jesus.
Yeah, it is a thing.
Saying there really are so many more gamers out there. The internet warps what the reality of the main scene is. Yeah, I think so, man. I think you're right. It's like there's a very small majority that like and comment on videos, like, so the ones that do comment I reckon would warp your perception of what the majority of them think. You know,
Yeah.
majority of people don't interact, so it's.
I've been guilty of that because, like, on our War Bosses thing, like, there's one guy who said horrible things about us, right? And I obsess over like negative comments that address me. But there's been like a handful of negative comments, and then I look at the like ratio on our videos, and it's always 90 odd percent positive. I don't think it's ever been below 96, and I think it's more like 97, 98, 99 most of the time, and occasionally 100%.
But I mean, that's how we're designed. Like we focus on criticism. We like that's just human psychology. Like that's how the whole social media and Facebook thing works. Is that it gets you into like negative reactions, emotional reactions, or responses to get you to interact, and get you to stay on the platform. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's
That's one thing I don't. That's one thing I don't really understand is the people who make like it effectively their internet career to go around bemoaning negativity of things, like, and are they just not aware that like how successful negative things are on YouTube?
oh yeah, like there
we
is careers to be made out of it. Like,
try to make like more positive content, and on the whole, it doesn't do as well. When we're moaning about how everything's shit, we do incredibly well. Although I still think our hobby ones are the best ones that I would like to do more of.
oh, totally. This is like the type of stuff that I'd like to do and that I want to watch is being aware of, like, I don't know how to really phrase this, but it's like I want my hobby to be a positive experience for me. And that's what I want to promote in it, and that's what I want to focus on. Not that I'd ignore, hey, this thing's kind of this aspect of it is kind of shitty when a company does this or a company does that, but it's like there's already plenty of people out there making that sort of content that if you want to go looking at it, you can. And the problem I find is that just doesn't put me in a good mood. Like, you know, it doesn't put me in this sort of space that I'd want to be in when I'm enjoying a hobby. I want it to be a positive experience. You know, for me, it's like I'm spending my money and I'm spending my time playing this hobby, or, you know, tabletop wargaming, and whatever gaming system I'm playing, I want it to be a positive experience for me. Because otherwise, what's the point? It's like I'm spending my money, I'm spending my time on it. If it's not a positive experience for me, then something needs to change. Either the game changes or I change. So it's, you know, it's deciding what to do with it then.
Yeah.
That's
I think that was we were talking about that sort of off camera, weren't we, the other day? Just like I think me and Scar have had a similar reaction to the announcement of the new edition of 40k, which is just largely indifference.
yeah, it's not that I'm.
I think we've moved on quite considerably.
Yeah, it's not that I'm negative towards it. I'm just not excited about it. You know what I mean? And that's just because I've played previous editions and I haven't enjoyed them. But, you know, if there's a new edition and it comes out and it plays really well, I'm like, well, okay, cool. That's just another. That's another game that, you know, you can play with your mates. That doesn't bother me. Like I'm not like super hyped about. I think this is the first time like an edition of 40k has come out where I'm not excited or I'm not, constantly talking about it because I play Battletech and I enjoy Battletech. And it's not that I'm quitting 40k or selling me 40k stuff off. It's just that I've noticed the problem that I was having with 40k is my investment, time wise and monetarily for me personally, wasn't giving me the type of return that I would, that I felt was worth the investment. So
Yeah.
I've shifted focus to what does give me the sort of return I want. So I play BattleTech. I enjoy it, and when the weather's good, I go out and I go fishing. That's what I enjoy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I'm kind of well. I should have taken a break from 40k and GW stuff a lot sooner. I
Yeah, look.
I got quite militant about it, but at this point, it's interesting because this is the first time that in the new edition that's come along, and I haven't been either tetchy or excited. I'm kind of not bothered, and it's a new feeling for me. I'd like
Sorry, PJS is saying, I bet you'd have a lot more room if you did sell it off. This is a very true statement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not getting rid of my orcs, but my plan is a lot simpler. I just like, right, well, they're going to continue doing this silly dance every 3 years. 3 years update is more than I'm willing to put up with because to me that's too short of a time, and I don't have any faith in any of the writers anymore, and I haven't had for a very, very long time. They hire on attitude rather than ability. And I'm not going to sit around waiting for that to get good, or even if it's possible for it to do so to my tastes. So I'm just going to play the editions I like. So I'm
Oh
going to
yeah,
play a lot,
totally.
a
Like
lot of
I'd be
third,
more
fourth, and
tempted to
second.
build a Forted army.
Yeah, I love the idea of the third edition codex, but it is so flawed.
Yeah. See, I didn't play. See, with orcs for me, I didn't play under Torded. I started being aware of orcs when the fourth edition codex was being talked about that it was coming out soon. You know what I mean? Because I played Space Wolves back in the day, and I loved playing Space Wolves because nobody really played them, and they were like with the third edition codex. When I got into them, they were Vikings in space, and then they were able to take. They were the only guys with venerable dreadnoughts. You could have like a venerable dreadnought as your HQ. No, there were like Space Marines had venerable dreadnoughts back then. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of character to them, and I thought they were really cool. Um, I mean, I started collecting them because my grandparents bought me a
Is that
box
the
set.
third one? Is that the third one where the thin book, or was this
The
the
thin
fourth?
book, yeah, third edition. I had that one. That was the codex I had, and then
Because then when they started having Wolf of the Wolf stuff, it got a
that
bit
was
ridiculous.
fourth. So that's when I became disenfranchised with sort of like the Space Wolves when they fourth edition when it wasn't Logan Grimnar as the other one. Oh no, it was Logan Grimnar because Ragnar Blackmane's the other guy. So when they put like Logan Grimnar in his fucking Santa Slay or whatever, or they I think the thing
That
for
is
me was the wolves, wasn't it? It was like they had space wolves riding giant wolves or something. I was like, oh, this is
the
yeah.
Thunderwolf Cavalry, yeah.
It just
It's off. They've been around that long.
yeah.
What is it?
Fort was when it like it basically changed into a totally different
Yeah,
army from.
they were an elite army that was kind of like Spartans that had slight wolf undertones, and then they just went,
Yeah, but it
let's
was like Vikings
morph
in space. You know what I
to
mean? It was like they were space wolves, but they weren't overtly wolfy. You know what I mean? Whereas
yeah,
they just I don't know what happened. They just leaned into it a lot, but in a different direction, and
yeah.
just it wasn't for me anymore. So I literally sold off like a 10,000, 12,000 point Space Wolf army that I'd been collecting since I was like fucking 10. And I just sold it off. I got rid of it. And I don't actually regret selling enough.
Never looked back.
Yeah, I don't. That was the only time I collected Space Marines was Space Wolves.
I kind of had a similar trajectory, although I didn't pick Space Wolves. I had my own chapter because I'm a contrary bollocks.
I mean, I
But
didn't pick Space Wolves. My grandparents did. They bought me like for one of me birthdays or Christmases. They bought me that codex and the box set of the Blood Claw Wolf Pack. It's like 10 dudes with ball pistols and chainswords. They were literally like the first Space Marines I ever made.
it would have been the Blood Claws or the Grey Hunters, probably. It would have been one of the two.
No, it was because Grey Hunters had the. I think that was like the second box I bought because I remember I was only like a kid, so when I put them together, I wanted them to be in the exact same poses as the ones on the cover of the box. You know what I mean? So I remember like it was Blood Claws. Yeah, the Blood Claws were the first box set I had of 40k stuff, and it was like ball pistol and chainsword, and then the Grey Hunters were the second box that I got because they had bolters. And I think, yeah, because the Blood Claws, I think like they didn't have good ballistic skill or weapon skill or something like that because they were supposed to be like, even the way they were structured, they were supposed to be like the noobs. You get me?
Yeah. They're their scouts are the oldest.
Yeah. See, that's what I really liked. I thought the scouts were cool, like because they were like the veterans of the Space Wolves, which was totally different to the other Space Marine factions, I believe, because like the Space Marines, it's like the scouts were
The youngest.
noobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've no idea what
The
the
only
lore's
one-
like
the
now,
only
but
other-
I thought that was cool. That
I
like
think
the
the
Space
only-
Wolf ones were like super elite.
I
And
think
then
the
like
only
that the
other-
long fangs as well. I thought that was cool. That the like their heavy support dudes, the slow dudes with the big guns, it's like right, they're long fangs because they're so old. Like
Yeah.
they're veterans as well, so their heavy support teams were like veteran dudes. I thought that was pretty cool as well. Like
Because I think the only other chapter that has scouts be anywhere different is the Templars with their initiates.
are they've
Who
like neophytes or something like that, and they're all
Yeah.
mixed together, aren't they?
Yeah, they go in with regular sort of like their equivalent of tactical squads, basically.
Like, because I remember when I first started with 40k, it was like the third edition box set, and Black Templars were the ones on the cover. So, like, Black Templars were pretty popular back then. Like, yeah.
Even though they didn't have rules for the longest time. I
Yeah,
think the
I've
first
always
one that
found
came
Black
in
Templars
was
to be a funny Space Marine faction because they've sometimes gotten a codex and sometimes they haven't.
yeah they had one. I think they got like they got sort of like patch rules. I don't think they ever had a dedicated codex because they always get because they're effectively in inverted commas they've always used the same codex as the ultras have just because they're ostensibly following the codex in the Index Astartes, but that's always been played around with, and sometimes it's been very much hinted that they really don't follow it at all. And I think the first time they got rules was probably, I can't remember if it was Eye of Terror, but I presume it was probably because I'm thinking it's Eye of Terror. It's going to be fucking Armageddon, isn't it? It's one of those two books.
Oh, yeah, because they were in Armageddon, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think that was the only real time they had anything. And then in sort of late fourth, because fourth got nearly everything, they really went down with codexes. There were so many factions. It was an amazing time to play. They finally got their own dedicated codex, and then they never had another one.
Since?
No. Well, sort of like, because they had I think it was like a late 3.5, but kind of the thing is that like with the fourth ed Space Marine Codex, was it the fifth ed one? But they started giving them like the doctrines and things, so you could. It wasn't too difficult to make effectively Black Templars from a regular book. And
Oh, I remember. Yeah. The standard Space Marine Codex was really well done. You could do your own doctrines and stuff. So yeah, I get you. The core like Space Marine rules and doctrines of making your own thing was so robust and so well done that it sort of undermined the idea of bothering to do other codexes. Like,
but yeah, they broke them apart, which and made them sort of distinct. They didn't really have hybrid codexes for an awful lot of fourth, and from then onwards, actually, because by that point the new IP manager was in Alan Merritt, and he's a man who doesn't like his food touching, so
We'll go to the comment section before you fall down another rant rabbit hole.
Well, no, it's just his major contribution to 40k was separating everything out. He's the reason why demons and mortals are separated.
Yeah, man. See, like me Warhammer Fantasy days, that's what I used to love, was that you
And
could
he
have
hated Gene Stealer
Beastmen.
cult. He hated Gene Stealer cult. He hated Chaos cultists. He hated anything where two factions sort of
Like cross-pollinated. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wanted to dial all of that out of the orcs, so that's why we've never had Cornate Stormboys, and freebooters have just been labelled as pirates because he wanted to pretend that.
I mean, like that is part of the reason I have I have a load of second edition ogres. I think they're the second ed ogres, and I have like an Imperial commander. Do you know the one with like the saber, where he's just sort of standing there? So I bought them ages ago, just so that I could kind of do like a
Blood Axe, yeah.
Yeah, Blood Axe, like an Imperial advisor, like in the old codexes, but just for like a bit of a laugh. Like, because you used to be able to get like ogre units and stuff like that, and I was thinking to myself, right, what bodyguard would an Imperial advisor have that would be able to stick around in an orc army and that the orcs wouldn't go near because they'd be too intimidated? And I was like, it wouldn't be Khazarkin. Khazarkin would just get beaten up and they'd get like their stuff taken off them.
I mean, they are very terrible because I never finished the paint job for one thing, and I was using the horrible.
Give it a look.
But
no, so not those dudes. They're like the ones I have.
Oh yeah, they're the ones I made though. But yeah,
yeah.
I just wanted to kind of point out that the current plastic Ogrins, which I think are a nice kit, they take Orky shoulder pads.
Close to the camera if you want to move them further away for focus. There you go.
The Orky shoulder pads and the Orky knives fit on the Ogrins quite well without really any modification. The paint job is terrible. I never did finish them though. I'd only base coated them so I could use them in a game.
What you're saying is you're as bad as me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonder we get on so well.
I wouldn't care. Like I made assembled a couple more and then just did nothing with them.
Let's have a look at the old comment section. So if we're saying Space Wolf is equivalent to Clanner, dirty Scarnier. How dare you, sir? Pistols at dawn. Mr. Pontifex is saying, some of my pals and me play around with a Warhammer 40k 5th ed campaign with loads of house rules. We've all been transferring to Battletech with the Escalation League started. Ooh, hoping to play a huge Alpha Strike game around September. Culmination of it, fun way to build forces with pals. Yeah, that sounds fun, man. Like, I've always been enamored with the idea of a campaign. Because that's how I ended up with a few of the bits and pieces I have for 40k. Because I always wanted to do, like, back when they did decent expansions and you'd have, like, your Planet Strike games, you could have, like, City Fight. Back when they supported Battlefleet Gothic, I bought a big orc fleet. I still have it. I played it quite a lot when I lived in London back in the day. And used to have fun with it. But the whole, like, I love the whole concept of, you'd have a space fleet, you'd come into system, you'd have space battles, and then you'd land on the planet, and then play games. I've always loved that idea of, like, start of campaign to finish, and then maybe do, like, little kill team missions in between where you're trying to take out, like, core parts of the enemy's infrastructure that would then ultimately affect a big, massive battle at the end. That idea of that sort of route of a campaign I've always kind of liked. Due to start a campaign, Eric was out of Battletech, but it's we've a lot of ideas. I need to get back onto them with that. I want to do trying to come up with ideas for unit loyalty. So we were talking about doing like a Civil War type of thing, where it'll be like he'll be one side of the Civil War and I'll be the other, where like a leader's died and maybe he's not left in air, so we're commanders and then fighting for power. But then I was trying to think, all right, maybe it'd be like a map based campaign, and then depending on how you interact with different sections of the map and the units there, they'd either go positive or negative in opinion towards you. So like if you go on a raid mission and steal a garrison's ammo or some of their vehicles or stuff because you need it, like their loyalty is going to sway towards the other guy more than you. So I like that sort of idea. I just need to sort of hammer something out, some sort of game mechanic or loyalty mechanic, work that out. But I think like a map-based campaign where you could do something like that, where there's two of you playing, but there's also opportunity to play games where it isn't just the two of you fighting against each other all the time. If you have sort of like a planetary defense force, where you could get some of those elements brought into your army eventually over time as they get loyalty, or you could use them as you play the up four against your friend. Maybe if he's doing a raid mission, you'll play as the planetary defense force or whatever. Something like that, something interesting where it isn't just two people.
I do think that is like with all of the big sort of all the big wargaming companies. I do think they're all pretty much missing a trick. Even like the new sort of skirmish specialist games stuff.
They're missing a trick in what regard?
Just campaigns. Like there's not a single decent campaign infrastructure that I've actually seen anywhere.
I don't think it's easy to execute, and the impression that I get is that it's kind of it's a niche within a niche, if you get me, or as the Americans would say, a niche within a niche. It seems to be like, yeah, that seems to be my general impression of it. Is it's sort of like a specialist within a specialist hobby. You know what I mean? But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like campaign rules can vary from being like somewhat decent to absolutely terrible and low effort. Like there's been some campaign rule sets I've looked at that have been offered up.
Well, some people do make a bit of a stink about that new Necromunda one, but I just immediately stopped when I saw what they'd done with the campaign rules, because if there's one thing they probably didn't need to update when they brought the new edition out, it was probably the campaign rules. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But I mean, I'm obsessed with trying to do like campaign systems. Our mutual friend Morgan, who's like behind the Gorkamok stuff, like the unnamed Gorkamok site and Tugs, like I've been talking to him behind the scenes quite a lot about like doing stuff for like narrative campaign infrastructure for Gorkamorka, because I just think like even within the older systems of like GW's various skirmish systems, there's a lot of potential there, and it's really left on the floor. I'll tell you the one that's worse, because I think sometimes GW does put out stuff that's half decent for campaigns. Like I didn't hate everything to do with that Crusade mode that they did for. I thought there was some nice ideas there. I just thought it wasn't the execution wasn't great. The ideas were there though.
What, a Crusade in the last edition, was it?
Yeah, and the current one, whatever it is, I thought it was decent, partly because they just very crudely plagiarized the campaign infrastructure that was in the third edition rulebook. For 40k, it's almost exactly the same with some good additions, but it's still the same core idea. They just fleshed it out a little more, and made a few changes here and there. But it's not bad. It wasn't bad for like a quick fixer upper. But the ones who are really bad for it are the people who are behind like the Star Wars stuff. Like they're sitting on a fucking goldmine. They've got board games. They've got board games within the same universe that they could have made use of. I mean, it's kind of impossible to do now because like the board games with Fantasy Flight and now Atomic Mass, who do the Marvel game, they have the Star Wars stuff now because Asmodee dickheads who don't like to spend money. So they offer.
Oh, so Asmodee had the license previously. Is that who did X-Wing originally, or?
Well, Asmodee own Fantasy Flight, as I understand it.
Right. Okay.
But it's like the executives made the decision that they just didn't want. They didn't want Fantasy Flight working on those games anymore, so they got offloaded onto a company that they got offloaded onto Atomic Mass, and I have not been a fan of what Atomic Mass has done at all.
What, to X-Wing?
I don't even play X-Wing anymore. Like I've kind of fallen out of love with it just because like they've really dropped the ball.
So
And you
like,
can see
well, what's changed in it that you've fallen out with it? Like, is it
the
gameplay's changed, or
they've fecked about with the gameplay. Some of the changes they've made have been good, but like the releases dried up. I mean, obviously some of that is entirely out of their control because COVID, but you can see that they put way more effort and emphasis in this new Shatterpoint thing that they're putting out, which is like it's a 54mm scale skirmish game set during the Clone Wars, which is like a thing that nobody asked for. It's going to be like Inquisitor. It's going to die so fucking hard. But like, I don't know. I just the scenarios that they did were probably more effort than the Fantasy Flight people had put in a while, but they were just so like convoluted and like, you know, companies seem to just not have an idea how to just like make scenarios that don't just result in, well, I could focus on this objective, but if I just kill you, I win anyway.
Yeah, I suppose like that can be the hard type of thing to do with games where if the sides aren't balanced, how do you execute them, and then what are the win conditions?
Yeah, because GW have gone sort of all sorts of ways with that. Sometimes it's like the issues have been in like the faction differences, and sometimes it's been in campaigns. Like they did some weird stuff. Like I remember in Lord of the Rings, there was like a scenario where, like, depending on what scenario you picked, kind of determined whether you won or not. So like I tended to run Moria Goblins. There was one scenario that if we played it, I was going to win it. Because the win condition was get more models off than your opponent. Not a greater ratio, more models. And I'm Moria Goblins. I've literally got the cheapest troops in the entire game. I've got loads of them. I'm going to win. Unless you kill everything and you don't have enough stuff to kill everything. So I would just win.
Right, so that's poor scenario design.
And then like 8th edition was probably the worst. The best example of the worst. Because like in 8th, in 40k, it was just like, right, well, I win if I table you, right? So I'll just table you. And I had loads of games that just went like that, and it was just like, just taking advantage of the fact that smaller, like, well, I imagine it got worse with the smaller table in 9th, but like, I don't know, just like I've never heard so many tales of like first turn victories and stuff like that. It's just like, you know, why? Why is it this way?
I think I specifically remember there was something about that edition I didn't like, where it was like the flyers, if they flew off the table, they counted as being destroyed or something like that. So, if I remember correctly,
If you had nothing on the table, at the end of a turn, you lost. Even if you had flyers or reserves to come on, you just lost.
I mean,
So
that's been like that for a few editions. Yeah.
Getting table in F it's just incredibly easy to do, but it's just like it's just dumb. Like that was one of the changes I thought they finally getting around to it with the 9th changes, because it was like they had these sort of, they finally realized, oh shit, that is actually a problem. So that's why they try to incorporate all these points. Part of the reason for the complexity, I suspect, is they're trying to address the fact that, you know, they need to have a pointing system where someone can be more killy but not necessarily win.
Yeah, well, I don't know what type of game they're aiming for, or what way they're going to look about it, but we'll have a look in the comments section and see if anyone has anything to add. Clint says, fuck long fangs. not a fan, no. He has a Black Templars army. So if I was saying Black Templars were popular because it's a very easy paint job, spray black, white shoulder pads, metal done. Yeah, that's just true. And I also think the whole the guys on the box set type of thing made them popular.
Yeah.
Man, Mr. Pontifex is saying I have too much Dark Angels at this point. Essentially the whole chapter, and I hate the direction they took them in over the years. You're not the only person I've heard who said that about the Dark Angels. They're very. I've had friends who've like who were big into the Dark Angels, and then they've. I
The
don't
game
know.
the game that finished me off playing 7th edition was a playing against Dark Angels, and I don't even think my opponent really enjoyed the game either, because basically I was using my guard, and my guard were cheesy at the time. I hadn't deliberately made them cheesy, but I'd accidentally made them cheesy.
Accidental fromage.
Yeah, well, it was a Gene Stealer cult army, so I picked the things I liked the look of, and they turned out to be quite good.
Ah, okay.
Because I like the idea of like sort of Ogrins that I'd made into like abominate. Like, well, I tried to make them into abominations, and I gave up in the end, and I put like 3 guys on a base, 2 of them carrying the shield, and 1 of them with a grenade launcher behind the shield. And I made 3 of those, and I stuck them in front of my huge blob of culty infantry because I thought that was like a cool image, and that was just a very effective way to play them in 7th. And it did quite well for me. And the one tank that I really liked the look of, the Wyvern, because I thought it was like the prettiest support.
That was the one with. That was the.
It was such bullshit in 7th edition, but I wouldn't not take it because it was too useful.
What was the anti-aircraft one called?
No, it wasn't the Hydra, but yeah, it was in the same
But it was
kit.
the Hydra kit, though. It was the Wyvern was like the 4 mortar one. Yeah, I remember fighting against that thing. It was a bit bullshit, alright.
A cheesy army is overpowered. It's more powerful than it should.
Yeah, a cheesy army would be an army that's overtly overpowered to the point where you
haven't built it for fun or anything.
Yeah, you haven't built it for the fun of playing the game. You've built it solely to win, even at the cost of enjoyment for yourself, and or your opponent. Like the whole, I know, like when we play games, we play to win. You know what I mean? Because if you don't play to at least try to win, you're not given a good experience or a good challenge of it. But the whole like thing of cheesy armies would be that they're so overpowered, they're so broken, and they're so out of balance that the actual gaming experience itself breaks down. I'd argue that would be a definition of a cheesy army to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't deliberately play like this, but it's just the sort of style that I have. But like,
sometimes you can stumble across them, and you'll be,
this is the classic thing, Stillmania, Nigel Stillman's principle. Pick your army list to under 2,000 points. This is for Warhammer Fantasy, but it can work for other things. Write down the roster and never amend it again. Make sure it fits the background. Collect and paint the army. Give it 3 coats of gloss varnish, then never touch it with a paintbrush again. Give every character and regiment a name. Do not even possess extra or alternative units. Just stick with what you've got. Make a carrying case that fits the army exactly. Fight every battle with the same army and never change anything in it. Fight in big games with just your 2,000 points and to hell with the odds. Never vary or change your army in any way. Resist all temptation. Model every magic item on the character who carries it, no matter what it is. What you see in the army is what you get. Take this literally. Always give your opponent the benefit of the doubt. Who cares if your opponents know your army composition by heart? Let your only surprises be your deployment and your tactical moves. Shrug off defeat, learn the lessons, and keep on practicing. Play for the fun of playing. When you win, the excellence of your generalship will be beyond doubt. That's the dream. That's kind of the way that I like to play, more or less. Although I can't be as entirely rigid with the whole never changing things. My brain doesn't work that way. I've got to fuck around with stuff. But
I mean, like, that's always been my approach, has been to change things up when I first got into 40k, because I'd want to try something. I'd be like, when I got into orcs and it was 4th, it was, you could do a lot of variation with the army, with the codex, because it would be like, if you take 2 big mechs, you could take 2 dreadnoughts as troop choices. You could do a dread brash. Your 3 heavy support could be dreads. You'd have, loads of dreadnoughts. You know what I mean? Or you could take knobs as elites, and they could take like battle wagons as transports. I remember that as a tournament list. It was terrible, but it was hilarious. Like battle wagons with death rollers. But like, there was so much variation with the army. It was great. And then I used to play me mates at the time quite regularly. and they'd try and tailor their armies to fight against the army that I'd played with them previously. But I kept rotating it out, like, so it'd be like Dreadnought heavy one day, and then I'd bring nothing but hordes the next day, and then I'd do like mechanized armor, and I do remember one of them venting his frustration. So you can keep changing your army. Like, yeah, it's fun. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Spending a week or two trying to, this will counter this and that will counter that, and then I'd come along with a totally different army. Like,
I mean, like the army that I made in 4th, my Gretchen Horde, was exactly Stillmania. I didn't realize at the time, but I built to a theme. Everything that I made, every unit that I had, was either something that had a Gretchen in it, or I'd figured out a fun way to model them. And that was the gist of why I went with them.
I mean, yeah, you've done some class conversions with them, and I like that you've used the old sort of night goblins.
Yeah. But like the weird thing is that I made them entirely as a modeling project, never really intended for them to be anything more than that, and they are my most victorious army I've ever used by quite a long way. Like I've won more with that than I won with anything else, because if I think about it, by the end of 4th, I knew the fuckers inside out.
I
I
think,
knew
yeah, I think
I
that
knew
helps.
everything about them.
I think that really helps is really knowing your units and your army, and I think that's the problem that I have with orcs now is I just don't know the army anymore.
Well,
Like,
I just think that's the biggest problem with 40k at the moment is it changes far too much.
yeah,
That you can't have any kind of security or
but
interest.
I mean, like, even having a codex for 4 or 5 years and just focusing on that codex.
The edition creep is too quick. Like they are putting out editions far too often, and it's just greed. It's just greed, and they don't even need to because they're still stinging people for point update books every year. So there's no reason why they couldn't stretch it out to 5 years. They're just greedy. They just want more money for basically nothing.
I mean, that's part of
And
why I like Battletech as well, is because like a lot of the variants of the mechs are the same as when they came out in the 90s. So someone who gamed with them back in the day can literally join back in and be like, yeah, this mech pretty much plays exactly the same way you remember it playing back in the day. Now, there's been 1 or 2 amendments to the rule. This has changed. That's changed a little bit, but the core of it, and basically the majority of the game, you'll recognize from back in the 80s, and I think that's brilliant.
yeah,
I don't get why some people are adverse to the idea of an old rule set. It's like there's been a conditioning, I think, with wargamers where if it's old then it's no good. But I think if a rule set has lasted this long and the core of it is still kind of the same, I think that speaks volumes to it being decent.
well, not just even that. Like just like even law. Remember I got in a discussion. I'm not trying to be mean to the guy, but he responded to I mentioned something from the Rogue Trader stuff. The Rogue Trader law for orcs is great because there's loads of it, more than we get any other edition. And he was just like, "Oh, that's 30-year-old law," and I'm just like, "Is this how you are with Star Wars?" It's like the Rise of Skywalker is great. Why does anybody watch 40-year-old law? Like it's like you can't do that. Its age doesn't matter. And people who say that rules age as well, I don't get that. I'm willing to accept that like tastes change and there are like you go through periods of certain sort of like preferences and prejudices within games, and there's elements of like sort of eras or even sort of trends that sort of occur within wargaming. But the idea that a rule set can age, I don't really get that. I think like the process of making rules better has got better over time, but that's not because rule sets age. It's just because progress is inevitable. Like you're going to learn more the more that it goes on because you've got all the material that was there before you, and then you can fiddle with it some more.
Oh yeah, the base at which you can build from. I get.
I was in a sort of discussion section, and someone was saying that describing the Hero Quest rules as clunky. And I was just like,
I think they're pretty
Hero
decent.
Quest? Fucking clunky? What fucking planet are you on? Like, it's one of the simplest systems that's out there. I can understand going, oh, it seems a bit old-fashioned for me. Like, and even then, well, people know exactly what I think of that. I think that's bullshit as well. But like, at least I can understand the impulse that comes from. But the idea that like something where you have very, very simple combat dice and very simple stats and very few of them, and very few mechanics can be described as clunky. I think we are very much starting to see that's another thing, but this is nobody's going to care about this other than me. But as a bit of a language geek, I've noticed that how words are being used within the wargaming sphere is changing a little bit.
Which words? Like what terminology? But before we go on to that, like your reaction there was sort of like, pistols at dawn. Hero Quest, how dare you, sir?
But like, I just just to respond to, I presume it's Kaiser modeling for advantage. I mean, I agree. Like, but I don't think it's the rules age. I just think it's the mentalities change with like, and
So
absolutely.
so you're
Rules
replying
design
to
is better. Yeah,
is
Kaiser
rules
saying
age because better ways of doing things are developed. You obviously didn't suffer the rules designed in the 70s and earlier. Yeah, no, I wasn't alive.
a little bit,
I
a little
wasn't
bit,
alive.
but I do get what you mean. I have read some of the old versions of D&D, for instance, but like. And I mean, like Rogue Trader First Edition 40k. I've played a couple of games of that, and it is very, very clunky compared to later editions. But again, I just think it's tastes change and new things are developed. I don't necessarily think that it's about the age of the rule set. Because, like, just to provide my counter example, like the reason I say that is because I'm thinking of something like Hero Quest, where Hero Quest is sublimely simple, but it's a very old game. I mean, well, not very old. It's quite old. It's like from the 90s or 80s or something.
I think it's from the 80s. I could
Yeah,
be
I
wrong.
can't recall. I think it probably is 80s, but like
It's of a similar vintage as me. You know what I mean?
whereas like, but these days it's kind of it has the potential to get a bit of vogue because it's simple. It's simple enough that that's kind of the current taste. So there's a lot of people go, "Oh, this system's great," and it's like, and a lot of them think it's like I've played modern dungeon crawler games that have similar mechanics. I don't know whether or not they knew that Hero Quest was a thing and have played it before, but you get an awful lot of sort of similar things. But also, yeah, a lot has changed since the early days. There's definitely way more to games now than there ever was.
Lorcan saying Hero Quest was 91 or so. So yeah, okay, I'm a bit older than it.
I thought it was 90s, like, but I couldn't remember. I mean, I missed out on Hero Quest when I was younger. The one that I had was a similar thing from MB. It was like a series called Dark World, and that was my first foray into miniatures. I didn't realize it at the time actually, but they were in the works, and I got Village of Fear, and then Dark World, the third one. I never had the first one, and they were like mid-90s, I think, and they were Hero Quest clones clearly. But they did things a little differently. It wasn't really dungeon crawling because obviously one of them was set in a fucking village, as you might guess. But it was very, very similar. Of like, you've got specialized combat dice, and then they added the thing of if you find the golden weapons, you can roll an extra combat die and things like that. But it was very, very similar otherwise. Had some really cool minis in it. I've still got some of them somewhere.
I have disagreement in the comment section. Hero Quest 1989, Space Crusade 1990. Never played Space Crusade. I've seen the box. I've asked to play it, and the people told me it was terrible. You'll love this comment. Locker was saying when we were asking about a cheese army, like the Edom Legion, Gorgonzola warriors. Jesus. As is saying, a cheesy army would be an orc army headed up by Gaz in a, in quotes, friendly game.
I was waiting for you to see that.
Oh,
not giving
no idea what you're talking about at all.
I remember Sid watching the video.
It wasn't my end of the table, mate. You know what I mean? Fucking.
Hey, it's all right for you. I was fucking right next to the shit. I just had to pretend it wasn't happening. Although I think Sid was on my side when he saw it. It's fine.
Walker is saying, if you ever want horror stories about cheesy play and 40k, ask Daryl Trainer about Gunner, the old Gaelcon 48k tournaments. Jesus.
Well, the game that I was referring to just reminded me. I might as well finish the anecdote. Like there was the guy I was playing against took a Ravenwing army in 7th.
Oh, they could do weird things back in the day. I remember someone
Yeah,
using a Ravenwing army against me where they could like deep strike stuff, and then on the
it was
first
much worse
turn they
than
didn't
that.
have much on the table, and then everything else deep struck on, didn't it?
It's worse than that. So like he
Something.
started. I think he had everything, but it was like he had bikers and he had a couple of land speeders and he had I think it was 1 or 2 death shrouds. And the death shrouds improve cover saves, and jinking is a kind of cover save.
Cover save, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah, it was 4 up normally, and with the death shroud, it added 2 to that, so it became 2+. Right, and on top of that, Ravenwing have skilled rider, and in that addition, it gave you re-roll to jinx saves. So it was. I think you only got to re-roll once on jinx saves.
So it was a 3+ rerollable if you failed on a 1 save.
2+. It was a 2+, 2+ re-rollable cover save.
I mean,
and there was far less things. There were far less things in 40k in 7th that could ignore cover than what could ignore invulnerables. It was cheesy as fuck. He played several games where he didn't lose a model and didn't see anything wrong with it at all.
I'm trying to remember now through the edition. So the last game of 8th edition I played was before COVID. The only game of 9th edition I physically played was with you guys.
I played like 1 or 2 more than that.
I mean, I played a good few of 8. I remember I played a lot of 7 because I was in London at the time. But I
played a lot of it because I felt like I had to, because I'd been crying out for change for quite a long time, and at the time they were saying they were pretending to care, so I gave them a shot.
But 7th Ed, man, I suffered through fuck.
7th was awful. I mean,
7th edition Eldar were fucking broken. Broken.
Yeah, and Necrons as well. Necrons were bullshit.
Well, we may who lives in London, he played Eldar constantly, and it was like, oh, for fuck. I don't think I ever won a game against them. Not once. It was an experience, alright. Well, look, we used to play Battlefleet Gothic at the same time, so then I'd get my Orc fleet out and hand him his ass. You know? I didn't mind too much.
I really liked Battlefleet. Like, it's
a good game. I think it's got one of the better campaign systems as well for like the specialist games. Like, I love the old school Necromunda campaign rule system. That's pretty good. But I felt like Battlefleet Gothic, I felt there was a major flaw with Battlefleet Gothic in that, like, one-off games didn't balance well. Like the factions were designed to have their flaws kick in long term. You know what I mean? So like the Necrons were really powerful, but if you were playing a one-off game, their downsides didn't kick in. So their downsides were like they were twice as expensive to fucking replace and really expensive to repair, and you gave away a load of victory points if you destroyed them. If you're playing one-off games, you don't really care about that, because you know they wouldn't be worn down over time.
Well, that was the downside, because we started with one-off games, found that the game wasn't remotely balanced at all, didn't enjoy the games, and just didn't play it.
Well, yeah, I think that sort of goes back to like people leaning into powerful sort of factions. You know, if people played the likes of Necrons, Necron fleets were really powerful. Eldar were powerful as well, and some of the Space Marine ships, especially in like the 2010 compendium, they could be really powerful. Like Space Marine battle barges were an absolute fucking cunt to deal
Space
with.
Marine should never have entered the fucking game. They ruined it.
I mean, like I've
Space
killed
Marines.
them. I've killed them. It's taken me like with 3 cruisers fucking boarding it and killing it. It's like
Mind
sweet
you,
Jesus.
the game that Space Marines ruined was Inquisitor, and
Never played it.
that's a game that ruined itself. But it had the stat line was based on percentile, so it was like every stat was out of 100, and Space Marines had 200 strength, which resulted in the fact that they could throw their bolter at you and do more damage with it than shooting you with it.
Oh, so they weren't. But it sounds like they weren't designed to be in the game. Then, really, were they?
Well, unfortunately, they decided that they were going to do a Space Marine model, so you could buy Space Marines for it, but they should never have added them. They should
But
never.
that's what I mean. Like, so they were a later addition. They weren't.
No, they were in the core rulebook. They had Space Marine stat lines there from the start. Because the story I heard was that Alan Merritt demanded that they were in. But also, like, I mean, that was Gav's little love child, Gav Thorpe, and I never really rated him, to be honest.
But as a rules writer, is it?
No, I don't think he's a good rules writer. He's a great law writer. I'm glad he's working for Black Library now, because his law that he used to do for fantasy was fucking good. Like, he's a good writer. He's a good writer, and sometimes if he's with the right group of games designers, he's a very good addition. But if he has too much of his own way, he can't carry it. He doesn't have enough talent. Like, really doesn't. He was half decent in fantasy, but often ran into problems. I see Essex is giving out about the Orc Codex in 7th.
To get a fucking wardy in edgeways here sometimes, I tell you. Fucking Essex is saying, I stopped playing Orcs in 7th as the Codex was dog shit. Yes, that Codex was an utter disappointment. Not least of which because I bought a limited edition version and they made an absolute bollocks of releasing the limited editions without actually serializing them and sending you out a sticker after the fact. But that, yeah, like, I think my enjoyment of 40k started to slip from I think it was from 6th edition. I didn't like. There'd be different rules coming in the editions that I didn't like because they just didn't play well for orcs, I suppose. You know what I mean? Because I think that the problem is like that the orc faction is never. They're always peripheral. They're never part of the core concept of the design. So when they're doing cool stuff for an edition, it'll be based around, oh, Space Marine captains have like high initiative and great weapons and great armor, so they've good survivability and they can dish out a lot of damage. So we'll issue challenges, and and if someone doesn't accept the challenge, then their character doesn't get to fight in the combat at all. It's like, okay, grand, that's cool. I hated challenges. They were, I felt they ruined the game.
I always felt like they designed almost every mechanic for 40k from 5th edition onwards, using the Space Marine Tactical Squad as the basis for all mechanic decisions and nothing else.
But I think my main problem is that I just got into the wrong war game because I've always I don't like Hero Hammer. I don't like characters being able to take half an army down by themselves. That just bores the shit out of me. I just find it boring. It's just so boring. I give him his Uber sword with his enchanted armor and he can take half your faction down. I'm like, no, it doesn't do anything for me. If I build an Uber character, that doesn't get any enjoyment. I don't get any enjoyment out of that. The only time I'd build characters would be like to give them invulnerable saves and power claws was to go hunt the other guy's character down. You know what I mean? I didn't really care about making the ultimate unbeatable thing. That isn't really the sort of experience I wanted out of wargaming. Yeah. I've always liked horde armies. It's always been about like the basic troops, the boots on the ground for me. Lots of troops, weight of numbers, that sort of thing. I've always liked that.
I'd be very interested to find if you tried out Epic 40k. I think you'd really like Epic 40k.
I
think
have
you've got
some epic stuff. I've never played it. I have some, like I've Gargants, I've Stompers. You know what I mean? I've a few stands of infantry. I've just never played it. Never got around to playing it because the whole idea was, to play some epic as part of like Battlefield Gothic as part of like a campaign where you're fighting on planetside and you're dropping down your epic forces down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was part of the idea of that all encompassing campaign that would have elements of everything.
Yeah, I didn't really play much Epic. I played a fair bit of War Master. I really want to
I've
get back
heard
in.
War Master's a really solid rule set.
It is one of the best ones they ever did. It's also an interesting experience because it's like top down. So it's like you really feel like you're the general of an army that doesn't necessarily do everything you want it to.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of like because
Morale.
you've got you've got command points, so you can reliably do a certain amount of commands a turn, and then maybe if your general isn't great, you maybe like you've rolling d6, and you've got like a handful of things you can tell your army to definitely do, and they'll do it. And there's quite a few sort of small scale games that work like that.
So is it kind of like the orders in Battlefield Gothic where you're trying to give orders?
Yeah, similar.
And then when they fail, then you're just doing bog standard stuff.
Well, I can't remember. I think there was a test. I can't recall.
You had to do a leadership test
I remember. Well, in War Master, I can't recall, but in I seem to recall you just because you've got like lots and lots of units. I think you just got like you got a certain amount, and they were just off providing your commander was in range to give the orders. And you had like a quite generous range because obviously, in theory, you would be sending out runners to give the orders to the units. And then the innovative part of it that War Master had that other systems that are similar, like Hordes of the Things, didn't have, was that your units had some automatic things that they would do if they weren't ordered.
If
like
this, then that type stuff, is it?
Yeah, like if an enemy ended quite close to them, they would charge.
Right, so they'd have behavioral traits. Okay,
they would have things that would do it, but like if they weren't ordered to do a thing, it would be slightly less effective. And then you had certain units in the game that were more effective regardless. They would generally be quite good regardless of what you did.
So that would probably come down to quality of troops then, would it? Like more elite units are capable of doing stuff by themselves.
More elites were just more. They just were what's the word? But they were more
capable.
Capable, yeah, they were more capable of. It's not the word I wanted to use, but it'll do. And like that was kind of the core nature of the game, and it's like very sort of it's all about maneuver. It's everything I want Warhammer Fantasy to be, but Warhammer Fantasy just can't be that unless you are playing on a sports hall.
I mean, like I used to like Warhammer Fantasy was my first love when it came to wargaming, and I used to love it. I used to love playing it. It was great crack.
It's a wonderful game if you love the hobby. If you just want a game and you just want to have like a big army that you move around and you try to outmaneuver your opponent, do not play Warhammer Fantasy. Warhammer Fantasy is a race forward.
It's a what?
Move forward. I used to call it move forward the game because that's more or less what you always do.
Oh yeah, but that's what the game was. It was like deployment was the key thing, and then after that it was just fucking.
Well, it was deployment and army list to some extent, and they made it more like the army list as the game went on. Because that's why the Death Stars became prominent in like 8th edition. Oh, I wonder who wrote that.
You know, I read that edition, and then I actually sold it to someone there a few years ago. I bought it and I read it, and I was like, yeah, I could see there was definite prejudices and preferences, and I was like, no.
There was one very consumer-facing rule in there that I was actually quite surprised that was there, just to give GW a little
filler. Was it? You were allowed to put filler in units?
Unit fillers that the rules that they put in where you could like.
I mean, that's because they were being used in tournaments anyway. People were doing that, so it was like.
Yeah. But that's about the only praise I can give Warhammer Fantasy 5th edition, because it was a terrible edition.
Now, I mostly played 5th and 6th ed. I think I played the absolute snot out of 6th ed.
6 was fun. The only sort of I would play 6 more often with friends if it wasn't for the fact that the Skaven book in 6 is so fucking boring. They've got none of their wacky shit.
Oh, so they don't have like all the
Doom Wheel wasn't in, and that's a deal breaker for me.
There was no Doom Wheel.
I've got to have a stupid thing that kills me more than it kills the opponent. I need those. That's why I play Skaven.
I used to play against them quite a lot actually, because there was a guy in the local club who used to have them. So remember, like the plague sensor bearers or the globadiers, the dudes who used to throw the globes and shit.
Yeah, the poison wind globadiers.
Yeah, I actually liked the Skaven. I thought they were pretty cool.
Skaven were fun, and in later editions they were actually even more fun. But I joined a Skaven forum. This is why Fantasy died. I joined a Skaven forum, and I put like a list, and I'd deliberately gone for all the random stuff, and all of the only responses I got was like 3 people replying, going, right, well, you want to take all the random stuff out your list. And at that point, it was like, is this a Skaven forum? Is this a fucking Skaven forum? You seriously tell me that you're not playing this to kill more rats than your opponent does?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said that, and they were like, well, it's not effective. And I was like, oh, fuck off. So I left.
I think that was one of my favorite things about playing Night Goblin armies as well, was the fanatics. It was just, I thought the fanatics were brilliant. They were great crack. They were absolutely great crack.
Warhammer Fantasy was a brilliant game and a brilliant idea, ruined by its place to a very, very strong extent. There's so many power gamers, and they just fucking ruined it. They absolutely drew all of the fun out of it.
I suppose that just depends on your local scene then. So
yeah, but also the internet scene very much killed it. But like all my local scene, all the power gamers played it, and like one of them, oh my god, I can't really go into all the tales because like some of this
you don't have to, trust me.
But like, because like one of the guys was an absolute weirdo, and I won't get into why he was a weirdo, but you can probably guess. He ended up banned from the store for a certain reason because certain things came out about him. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you can leave that off air.
But he always used to turn up with stupid armies, and literally he's an absolute fucking grade A idiot. He didn't know how to do any tactics in game, but he always had like a strong army. And I accused him of getting army lists from tournament listings. And he tried to lie, and it was very, very obvious that he was lying. But he used to play as dwarfs, and dwarfs were fucking bullshit.
I mean, I used to play dwarves, and I thought they were fucking great crack.
Yeah, frequent. They've got a downside. They're slower, but and they don't have magic, but they have a thing that's better than magic, and they have a load of banners and other things that allow them to move ridiculous distances. So they don't have any downsides whatsoever.
I mean, I used to love that about dwarfs. Is I loved the slayers. I love them as a concept and an idea. And I remember someone saying that to me, because I used to put them on the flanks, and I used to move them forward.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that sort of mentality of you're not playing them right. It's like, oh no, they're supposed to be because they're unbreakable. They hold your flanks. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to move them. I'm like, but that's boring. So yeah, like I used to love playing dwarves, where there'd just be like a solid wall of dwarves just marching towards the enemy, or
the dwarfs, fantasy dwarfs, are one of the coolest ideas, and like some of the most negative experiences I've had in the game is playing against people who use dwarfs, because dwarfs could be very easily cheesed. And I just played against one guy. He just drained all the fun out of every game that I ever played. Like, he spent like one fantasy game just tell me endlessly that he hated playing against dark elves. I hate elves.
I don't know, maybe he was just really into the Book of Grudges. I don't know. See, I've had shit games over the years, but I don't let them define the games for me. You know what I mean?
I just never really had like the fun games I ever expected to get out of fantasy. I don't miss it. I must say I don't miss it at all. I miss the hobby aspects of it. I loved the ideas of it, but that's kind of why I wanted to bring up that, like, the coolest army concept I ever heard was a Warhammer Fantasy army, and it was based during the time of the Storm of Chaos, and like it was basically like a bunch of villagers that had banded together to make an army, and they were just fighting for revenge because they basically their towns had been decimated. They were gone. There was barely any of them left, and just all the men was just like, "Feck it, I'm going to get some revenge." And it was mostly militia units in Empire. It was like the Empire army, so it was like militia armies, militia regiments, and they're rubbish. But that was the core of the army.
But that's a
And
great
then there was
unit.
a cannon. Yeah, like the guy. This isn't my idea, by the way. This is someone else's idea. But like he was saying, he had a cannon that like been repurposed. It was a statue in the middle of one of the towns. All of the militia were from the same village, and their banner was the tavern of the village they were from. Like the tavern banner, or like in some cases, like the name of it, because it being fully burnt down. And then he had like a really old battle wizard who just been selling potions at one of the villages, and then a couple of other things, and like the hunters as well with like bows and stuff. And like it was such a brilliant idea, and he posted it on a forum, a fantasy forum, and he just got shit for the fact that his army list was weak. Nobody complimented the idea. They just told him the army was pointless.
Yeah, but
It was
I
shit
think
for
this
no point to it.
ties back into what we were saying earlier, and what Clint was even saying as well, is like when you're going onto forums or you're going onto social media and you're going into like a very small pool that doesn't actually represent the whole hobby, like, you know what I mean? So you might be getting
It's
a
a real shame.
negative viewpoint from, you know, this specific cabal of players,
Oh yeah,
but that's
it's
because they're interested in a specific style of play, and that's what they're into. And anything that isn't that, obviously, they're going to be adverse to.
yeah,
So
but I think that's kind of indicative of the problem, though, because the fact of the matter is because a lot of the people on the internet seem to think that like tournament play and competitive play is basically their fiefdom, right?
I don't think so.
They,
I don't think the majority of
I do think
people.
they really do, because I mean, if we look at the rise of how the game has gone in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, of like very much going towards the tournament and officialdom culture, they've very much driven the direction that it's gone.
I mean, like,
Um,
if that's the direction you want to go in, I can understand that as a company, like, 'cause it makes sense monetarily, get that churn going and go for like a pay to win model. But I don't think out in the long term, it's like, well, what, you know what I mean? If you're only getting feedback from a
oh
certain
well, no.
aspect of the hobby or a certain part of the player base, then what, you know, the majority of people, like, what are they into though? Like, I don't know what the majority of people who buy Warhammer are into because they don't tell anyone. You know what I mean?
I remember I had it out with a guy in a forum.
You
Years
having
ago.
it out with a guy in a forum? Psh,
I
Jesus.
know, right? It's exactly the guy you're thinking it is as well. But
Fucking.
I remember saying like I just said like the majority of people don't play tournaments, because he was just like, I was just sick of him going, oh, that won't work in a tournament. It's like, what does that have got anything to do with it? Like most people don't go to tournaments, and he disagreed with that. And I was like, you fucking what? Like, there's no way that most people in this hobby do tournaments. There's no way. Like, there's not enough tournaments going on to accommodate them. Like, most people won't. That's a niche within a niche.
I
And he
guess.
thought it was the majority. He literally thought that most people go to tournaments. It's just like, I fucking doubt it. And like, I'm sure a lot of people go to tournaments. I'm sure a lot of them go once and never fucking again, like I did. Like,
I went to a couple of tournaments back in the day. I mean,
I,
I've.
I went
Do
to
you
a
know what I
couple of
find
the
strange?
numbers, but
Since I've
I
gotten
don't
into
feel it.
Battletech, I've been to like 3 tournaments, 4 tournaments now, maybe even 5. I think I've done 5 tournaments now, and that's like unprecedented for me because I don't see myself as a competitive player. But I really enjoyed the format. Like,
Every
uh,
time I've been, it's because a friend of mine really wanted to go and couldn't get a partner. That's the only time I've ever gone. And every single time, I've hated every single fucking second of it. Every time. And I just regret being nice.
love
I
it.
regret being a nice guy who does a favor for a friend, because I just think if I was a selfish cunt, I'd have never had these awful experiences.
Oh, I
And I
love it.
never developed a
Clint,
hatred of tournament playing. I
Clint,
never would have done it.
in the comment section is saying a lot of people that are on groups on the internet are often looking for tips to worst question mark. But I first went onto YouTube. It's the win. Saying the vocal minority. That's why I like Battletech, is that there's no. It's a really interesting system. You know, there's not really this ivory tower concept of this is how you play it this way and no other way. It's like, here's the rules. Here's a load of optional rules. Do what you want with it. Have fun. I'm like,
I want more experiences like that. And like, I'm working on a couple of games myself, and what I want to do is do something entirely different. I want a different kind of experience, something you wouldn't normally expect of a tabletop game. Like, that's what I'd like to get out of it. I'm always on the lookout for different things. Although the main thing that I really want is like, because I mean, I still have a love for 40k to some extent. I mean, I don't really have any kind of love for Games Workshop as a company or for the new games. The new games can go jump off a cliff for all I care. But
I mean, I like 40k orcs. I like the
I love
orcs.
orcs. I love
Not
orcs.
much else of the
Orcs will
setting
always
I'm bothered about.
orcs will always be in my heart. But like, I just think like I don't know. I'm sick of this competitive nonsense. I remember there's this guy at my local club, and I was just like, you know, I
And
kind of
don't
said,
focus on it, is what I'd say, man.
no, I was just gonna say like, he said something weird, which I'm just gonna relay, which was that like, so like the thing that drove me away because we were talking about like 40k and stuff, and I said, yeah, I don't really bother with it much anymore. I said like the thing that drove me away was the competitive and the tournament culture. And it's like, oh, I'm a casual gamer, but I like the competitiveness of the casual game. And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Competitiveness of the casual game.
Yeah, it just sounded like a load of horseshit to me. I mean, maybe I'm too cynical for my own good, but I just thought, well, that's a load of bollocks, mate.
I don't know. I think there's different types of players who want different types of experiences out of the game, and you just have to find like-minded individuals who match up what you want out of a game.
Mhm.
So, like, if you're coming up against people who play competitively and look for the competitive experience quite a lot, and that's not what you're looking for, of course you're not going to enjoy the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's going to be the same no matter what.
I quite liked there was Yahtzee Crosso of Zero Punctuation. He's a computer game guy, so some of you may not have heard of him, but he's got a series called Zero Punctuation on the internet. It's a YouTube thing. And he also for a while had like a written article that followed it called Extra Punctuation. And he now does videos as Extra Punctuation now as well. But he described himself as half a competitive gamer. Doesn't really care about winning, hates losing. And I was just like, that's exactly how I feel. Because I would rather lose a close game than win by a margin. And I
You'd rather
I'm
lose a close game than win by a margin.
yeah, win by a significant amount.
Oh yeah, what I mean, like I've had experiences like that where if you win a landslide victory, um, it doesn't
Landslide, that was the word I was looking for.
landslide. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, winning a landslide victory, like I've had games like that, and it's just there's no enjoyment in it. You know what I mean? It's not an enjoyable experience for you, and then you see the other player you're playing, they're not enjoying themselves anymore. So there's no fun in it. You get me?
I mean, I like winning decisively if I've played incredibly well and my strategy's
Yeah,
on point.
but if it's been a
But
close game, you feel like
yeah,
you've earned it. Like it's
yeah,
been a challenge for both of you. And like I've said before, like some of the best games of like 40k that I ever played, I lost, but they were really hard fought. And I find that happens quite a lot in BattleTech, where it's like you're knocking absolute lumps out of each other, and you don't really know what way the game's gonna go until it gets to that decisive point where it's like, right, I've cored your mech or whatever, or you think you're out of it, you think you're down and out of the game, and then all of a sudden somebody's reactor gets blown up or whatever. It's fun. You know what I mean? I like those type of games. It's never fun. You can still get it in any gaming system, but like it's never fun if I just head cap my opponent like in the first 2 or 3 rounds of the game and the game's over. You know, because then it's like, oh well, it's like extremely rare to happen, but it's like, um, yeah, I feel it sort of robs the experience. I want to enjoy playing the game. My enjoyment of the game is also partially based on my opponent enjoying the game as well, because it's a
Yeah,
joint experience for me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to enjoy myself at the cost of other people. And I'm not just saying that for, to try and come across as holier than thou. It's that, like, I genuinely, if somebody else is not enjoying themselves, I won't enjoy the experience. You know what
same.
I mean? Um, but I suppose that just comes down to individual characters' personalities, and whether you give a shit about how other people enjoy a game or feel about it. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, that's just gonna come down to your personality traits. What enjoyment you get. We'll go look at the old comment section here. But said yeah, he played loads of 8, but he uses guard mostly. New codex for orcs came out. I switched back to them. I haven't played the deck guard since. Man, Thorkin is saying, I reiterate that GW's writing peaked with Space Marine 2nd edition.
Oh, I disagree there, but like the best codex the GW ever did was the 3.5 Chaos one.
That's a good one.
It was
I like the
amazing.
Tyrannid Codex of the same
I
time. Do you know the
just,
black
I
one?
yeah, yeah. I wish because the Tyrannid one and the Chaos one, and then there was a couple of other ones which currently escape me. Like Witch Hunters is one of them as well, where those codexes were just full of options and
It was very
fluff.
modular.
It
Yeah.
was very easy to customize the armies to your heart's content and make very fluffy armies. And if they'd managed to get to the point where all of the codexes in third were like that, that would have been the best edition of 40k that ever happened, easily.
Mm.
But that's the problem with GW, is they're never fucking consistent. It's just always something goes wrong. And for us orc players, the problem was is we never got a 3.5. We were stuck with our third edition codex. I mean, I always want to play it again because I love aspects of it. I think in some ways it was inspired. I loved early third edition's obsession with the retinue. I wish that was a thing the 40k brought back, this idea of creating a very characterful sort of like bodyguard that was customized to your general. And I love that idea. I
Yeah,
love
that was a great concept,
that.
wasn't it? It really was.
They never did much with it, and they abandoned it halfway through. But then, like, you had other cool stuff like that. But like every time I think about going back to playing the Orcs in third, I'm just like, oh shit, my grots all drop down to BS2, and I just cannot fucking stomach that. No way. My grots have to be BS. My grots have got to be BS3. I'm not having BS2 grots. No way.
Yeah, but
That's every time I think.
did they not have decent blasters, or was that in second ed when they had like the little auto cannons or what?
I honestly think the blasters were exactly the same. I think they were range 12, strength 3, AP dash. No
But
special
then
rule.
what was, because wasn't there like second edition box set, the one where they all had these big fucking massive auto guns? The grots. Grots all had like,
Second. They
yeah,
were good. They were good in second because they could take auto pistols and knives or auto guns, and they were pretty good. They were a decent core unit, and I think they even had an armor save because I'm pretty sure they wore armor back then.
grots
But they
with
were all right.
auto guns and armor. Holy Jesus, could you imagine?
Yeah.
I'd be mint if they did something like that again. I'd like to see them do
I
something
would
with grots.
I would like to bring those back. I always wanted GW to do like a supplement freebooter codex where they brought back a load of cool out there orky things that couldn't fit into a regular codex, but if they did a dedicated freebooter one, they could. Things like Cornet Storm Boys, and they could do Gretchen Bandits, and then just make the Gretchen Bandits to be exactly like the second Dead Grots with like armor and assault weapons and like decent guns and like nasty tactics. I came up with some fun ideas for them, and like orky robots that would be fun. Bring back the Tin Boys and just all
Grow
sorts of shit
tanks.
like that. And
Grow
well,
tanks into.
Yeah, you could do that as well. Freebooters would be great to do because like there's just so much flavor in there, and they wouldn't even have to hold together as a cohesive thing because you don't need that with freebooters because there's just all sorts of variety. And you know that when they brought back Gene Stealer Cult, I was slightly hopeful that we'd get something like that. It never transpired, obviously. I do sometimes worry that nobody really in the GW sphere particularly likes orcs all that much. And whilst apparently one of the main writers that we've got in 40k at the moment is apparently a big orc player, he definitely doesn't like Gretchen.
No.
All he's done is nerf them. All he's done is nerf them. They've just been nerfed and nerfed and nerfed into the fucking ground every time that the orcs have had an update. Especially the most recent one, because they finally got to the points that they should have been when they had decent rules, but they nerfed the rules, so now they're not even worth the 4 points that they are now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember they went up to 5, and I was like, how is this the equivalent of a fucking guardsman?
They were 5 points because 8th edition could not handle Gretchen. Like the system they've made is a system that's great if you assume that everybody has roughly the same amount of mages in an army. That system works. But the fact of the matter is 40k has too much diversity for the system that they've made. It's fundamentally flawed. Like the 8th edition just can't work. 9th edition was a patch to try and make it work a little better, and they just can't handle it. They've just not got an idea what they've done, and because all of the things that they've removed are things that they probably shouldn't have removed from the 3rd edition rule set that they originally had. Like getting rid of initiative made combat ridiculous, so they've had to come up with another.
I felt initiative being given the chop was a bit weird. We've a few comments in the comment section we're gonna pop in and have a look at. Essex was saying, totally both players need to enjoy the game. For me to enjoy it too. Oh yeah, definitely. Like, you know what I mean? It makes for a better experience all around. It's a shared experience. Like, I find it funny that some people would say, like, you know, that they have this perception of maybe tabletop wargaming being antisocial, but it's like, hey, you can't really play it by yourself. You need to, yeah, if you want to play the game, you have to interact with other people. So
that's why I kind of like the hobby more, because the hobby's the solo bit. Because you're on your own with that, and then like nobody can fuck up the hobby for you.
no.
So you get onto the
If
table.
friends like me, you'd be grand. You'll enjoy a game now and then, you know, when I come to visit. So you're saying if someone isn't enjoying themselves, Scar threaten them. I've seen it. I'll threaten you with a good time. Or so help me God. Fucking. Oh yeah, he's not lying either. Yeah. Runer Actual was asking, what faction are you painting those mechs? Runer, I haven't decided with a lot of them yet. These guys are the Alpha Strike box set. Some of these here, the Phoenix Hawk and stuff like that. My main plan is I plan on doing one of every mech I come across in this sort of tournament color that I have, where it's green. Oh, give us a look. Dim as mechs. Is this black you were doing, and then you were doing like edge highlighting on it?
I'm mourning it because this is the old game color black that's very glossy. I was just like, that's perfect for mechs, and they're discontinuing it. I'm like, thank God I won't need to buy mechs for a long time. Jesus, but yeah, these oh God,
Gonna paint their missile pods up there, buddy?
Oh yeah, they're not finished. I kind of ran out of steam. I'll get back to them. And finish them off, and I'll.
Do you know what I find is, like, someone being enthusiastic for the hobby and wanting to do hobby is very infectious. So, like, I've introduced a friend of mine, Arthur. I've introduced him to Battletech, and he's taken to it like a fucking duck to water. It's brilliant,
yeah.
And he's been wanting to do like hobby days. So I've gone over to his place and I've brought like literally I have like a whole backpack full of fucking paints and paintbrushes and everything, because he doesn't have much starting off. It's like bringing everything, bringing spare brushes, bringing spare paints. You know, he has his miniatures, bringing base material, giving them static grass, and it's like I find that's really good to get the old ball rolling myself. That's how I got like a fair chunk of this guy painted up, was my friend Arthur getting into the hobby and wanting to paint, you know, It's like when someone wants to get the hobby done and they're really excited about it. Yeah, I don't know. It sort of spills over, and I'm like, yeah, fuck it, let's do
Oh
some
yeah,
painting.
definitely.
You know what I mean?
I can't remember what faction I was going to do mine. The is it Davion? I can't. You
Davian, House Davian. Oh, I think
Marek. No, House Marek. They're an
House
offshoot of
Marek.
House
Yeah,
Marek.
I think
Yeah,
you were looking at like House
Free World
Marek,
League.
and who was the fucking clan? Diamond Shark, was it? Was it?
Or clan wise, Snow Raven.
Or Snow Raven, right? You wanted to
Yeah.
do like the trade eccentric dudes, wasn't it?
Well, they're logistics. They've got loads of spaceships and ships, and when they fight in battle, they tend to use more of the tanks and the aircraft, which is why I'm very, very upset about this current Kickstarter, because it's exactly my jam for my clan, and I'm just like, oh god, I don't have the money to throw on it. But I'll get the Lance packs.
Oh, apparently they will be doing salvage boxes that will have vehicles in them. I don't know if it's for the Kickstarter, but in the future, it's
Though there's a Lance pack that's got, well, it's not a Lance pack.
yeah, but apparently
got loads of the main.
I've heard this
3 or 4.
somewhere. Somebody said this to me somewhere. I'll ask Lorcan to confirm or deny this, but apparently you'll get 2 vehicles in a salvage box, which will be fucking mint.
Oh wow, okay, that's
Apparently. Now I could be wrong, so take that with a very large pinch of salt or a bucket of it. But I heard that somewhere. I don't know. Lorcan is saying,
or just have the salvage box be cheaper than buying the mech salvage boxes, and you're laughing either way.
I don't think so. I think that's why you'd probably get 2 vehicles. It would be the same price as like a mech salvage box. Do you get me?
Yeah, I hope so.
Lorcan is saying a few things. Yeah, my brother was surprised to discover I had a load of friends from my nerdy hobbies. I was like, where do you think I was going 2 nights a week for the last 3 years before I moved out? Get some gloss medium, he's saying, and mix it in with the black paint. I was thinking the same thing, but yeah, I think that's sound advice from Lorcan.
Oh yeah, there are absolutely other ways to do it. It's just like the convenience of
the frustration at the inconvenience of having to mix the gloss in himself. How dare they? Who do they think they are, the bastards?
Because obviously, I mean, this isn't it, because this is the black grey, but I've got the model color stuff as well. I've got the model color black somewhere else. I mean, I normally have the model on the tabletop, but
do they have bikers as well? Is that bikers on stands there?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's all sorts. Like you can get like little Scout ATVs that are like quads as well. These are like bikers. The bikers are bullshit. They're called free riders. They're fucking hilarious. They can chuck mines down and all sorts of shit. I've had a load of fun with them.
Oh,
They're
cool.
ridiculous. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. There's the Paizo with a bit of color on it. You can just
so like this seems really odd to have in like this sort of Mad Max faction. Is this big robotic dog?
Well, they've got an odd mix to Resistance, because they've got like the repurposed civilian shit, and then they've got stuff that's like properly military.
Like like that robot dog thing looks Skynet, like, and then you've got like Mad Max and Skynet on the same side, like.
I've also got like huge fucking drills. Where the drill bits
for anything there at all, are you?
Oh yeah, that's a big boy. 16 of those can come out of that. It's hilarious. Like, or is it even 18? It might even be 18 because they come in squads of 6. So, but like they've got like more military things, and they've also got hovercrafts as well.
Ooh.
The
are these the supersized hovercrafts you were talking about, or are these like?
Oh no. So there's transport hovercrafts. They're called Krakens. Right.
I love how he's talking and getting away from the microphone. He's as bad as Lorcan, this bollocks.
Sorry, because I'm reaching down to get stuff. This is the Kraken. This is the transport one. There's like a little ramp that comes down the front, and you can like literally fit the models in. So this game is quite good for skill, because you can normally fit exactly what you can transport.
Yeah, I noticed that about it. I remember like the dude who designed it was like everything has to be able to fit into where it's supposed to. Like if there's a hover transport, yeah, they'll fit in, or if there's like a drop ship, it's like the vehicles should actually physically be able to fit into place on the drop ships.
So Kraken transport hovercraft Leviathan transport hovercraft.
Jesus, they're lovely.
Yeah. And they're a bit naughty in game as well, because normally you get like what's known as an aerial advantage. So so you kind of build your armies using like little mini force augs, is the only way I can really describe them, because they're kind of like force augs. So you get a certain amount of different units. So you've got different types. So you've got like your is it just called troop? I don't think it's called troop, or is it standard?
Core or something, or
Oh yeah, and you basically see that's the only way you get infantry, and you can pick infantry squads with that, and then you've got like it's like 1 to 2 heavy or something, and like maybe a scout type, and there's like various archetypes. There's not too many, and then you've got like heavy, and you've got support, and support are different, and support are things like these anti-air gun technicals.
so yeah, I was thinking they were technicals, and you just have a
And then
turret on the back of it.
anything that's a transport or a flyer is auxiliary, and they can be added to any force org without fucking it up in any way, and you can have as many as you like. Although limitation based on points, obviously. And then you've got your command as well, and they've got different ones. And you activate your battle group, and then your opponent activates a battle group, so it's alternating activation.
And is the activation paired? Are the battle groups like the ones that you built, where it's like, oh, it's this troop and this aircraft and this other troop?
Yeah.
And when you activate, that all activates together.
And if your entire battle group are all in flyers, in flying transports, you move onto the board in the first turn. Anything that doesn't do that has to turn up later, so you get an advantage for having faster moving things, basically, because it gets there quicker. That's the idea. And hovercraft count as aerial for those purposes, so they count as aircraft.
Oh, so they're a support element, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, they're transports. They are squishy. If the opponent decides to take them out, they're a lot easier to kill than a lot of the other transports. But they are, especially the Krakens, because they've got like 1 wound. So if you do enough damage to them, or maybe they've got 3, I can't remember. But they're pretty squishy. But they're fast. They're fast, and you deploy out. And when you come out of your transports, your accuracy is affected. So it's you've really got to plan ahead, or if you're going to be aggressive, you've just got to hope you do enough. It's a really fun game. I love it. It's so much more tactical than a lot of the other games I've been playing recently. Naming no names
here as well. Snow Raven are aerospace heavy, Diamond Shark / Sea Fox are Ferengi with battle mech. Runer Actual is saying that is correct. 2 tanks in a salvage box, except the long tom that has the cannon and the carriage. Yeah, that's a 2-parter. I remember that. Lorcan was saying vehicle salvage boxes are 2 to a box for RRP $12. They're more expensive again. Vehicles are not guaranteed to be the same unless you pull a mobile long tom, but that will be the cannon and carriage in the box. Yeah. Vehicle salvage boxes will be available as add-ons in the Kickstarter. You can't pick them as your salvage boxes from your pledge level, or your bonuses from taking the inner sphere or objective force packs. See, I would have done that. Walker was then saying the UCM's military is built from scratch on the colony worlds and is designed around efficiently, opposed to having loaded military industry. That's your UCM forces in your subzone.
Yeah.
Essex is saying alternate activation.
He likes his lore in basically everything, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, like he loves his lore. Alternate activation is definitely the best way forward for wargaming. I think so, Clint. And I think the thing that I really enjoy is simultaneous damage. This whole idea of who gets to go first having a massive advantage because they'll do damage to your units and you won't be able to reciprocate the damage. I think that as a mechanic, I think that's archaic and quite frankly shit. I think there's no excuse for it.
I really hate the term archaic, and yet I don't really have a counter argument.
But it's
no, it
weighs like that sort of mechanic in a game weighs so much on the player getting to go first. If there's no elastic band mechanic or something to recompense the person going second. It's just terrible. It's
Oh,
literally shit. Like, uh, whereas simultaneous damage, and there's no reason why we can't do it on 40k. Like, it's just you'd have to put maybe damage markers down until the end of the first turn, and then you start taking casualties off. But people will piss them on about that. They'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to be putting tokens down or whatever." It's like, what you know. It is what it is. It's 40k is not that type of game, so that's just down to me. Whereas with BattleTech, it's like I head capped my friend, and then he still got to shoot with his weapons and like kill my mech off in the same turn. You can simultaneously kill each other. I'm like, that's awesome. You know what I
well,
mean?
even if it was like you did a ranged attack, and because you got the advantage, you get the chance to do the most amount of damage. But your opponent, because they're also in range of you, they can deal half effectiveness. You know, even if there was something like that, it's still better than the option of just like delete your opponent before they get a chance to do anything, which seems to be the way that 40k is at the moment.
I think it boils down to like who someone winning initiative should have some form of advantage, but what level is that advantage?
Yeah, I just think any system is better than the Age of Sigmar one, because the Age of Sigmar one is absolute dog shit and I fucking hate it.
And why is that? Is it because you can lose initiative multiple times in a row, or
No, it's partly because you can lose initiative, so you can easily get double turn, but it's also the fact that it's alternating initiative.
right?
Um, but your opponent gets to do everything before you do anything. So, like, the best example I can think of is that early days with Age of Sigmar, Destruction got buffs to movement, and in Destruction were Augurs, and Augurs had this character that could get on one of those big monsters, like the Thunder Tusk or whatever it was, and one of those had like a ranged mortal wound thing that was more reliable if you took no damage. So what you would do is you would get first turn, or even go second. It didn't matter. Your opponent would move towards you, and you would just move near them, use your destruction thing to get even further, even closer. And then if you got first turn, you could literally kill your opposing hero generals with this guaranteed 6 mortal wounds. And you could delete characters that would give buffs to your units that you were relying on before they got to even give the buffs away, because you would get your entire turn before they did. Whereas if Age of Sigmar was you're rolling for initiative to like get the advantage, but you're getting the advantage in a phase, and then your opponent gets the same phase, and then you move on to the next one. That makes some kind of sense. The way that they do it now, it's like the only sort of, if I'm playing Age of Sigmar and they go first, or they go after me and then they get 2 turns, the only way I get to mess with their ability to deal damage to me with basically me just standing there watching is in combat. They pick a combat, then I pick a combat. That's it. That's the only agency I've got. I've got to stand there and take it until combat, and they still get the first pick. So
What
they just
about
pick
like
the crew.
I don't see why alternate activation isn't in the same phase. Like, so you just go through. Like, I don't see why a turn can't be. There's the movement phase. Like a turn should be for both players. So there's a movement phase. You activate a
Me and a
unit. I
friend,
activate a unit. You activate a
me,
unit.
me and a friend tried that with Age of Sigmar. We actually tried the just do it by phase rather than get a whole turn, and we vastly preferred it. But the problem is there's too many people within the Age of Sigmar system now, because it's their third edition in. It's a feature now. It's not going to go anywhere. That's why I stopped playing Age of Sigmar, because they're not going to get rid of it now. Because if they got rid of it now, the people who do like Age of Sigmar will be upset because they like that for some reason, because they're idiots.
Your most humble of opinions, them. That was.
No, I didn't really mean it, but I kind of think it still.
I've never
Not a
bothered
good
with
system.
agency.
It's not a good system. You know what? It's a game with a lot of potential. I still think it's got the potential to be an absolutely amazing game. They just need someone competent to do something with it, because it's just atrophying at this point, and it's just 40k but with a different set of claws at the moment, and it's just
See,
like it's
I don't even know what the player base is like. Is it healthy? Is it happening with it?
Well, they like to say they're healthy, but I think they're probably much the same as all of GW's sort of things. They're tournament minded and they like the inequalities because the inequalities drive the meta.
And
And like
they can do it for some games, but they don't have to.
People are quite attached to the priority roll off because they like the idea of them being the boot. If you follow my analogy, they like the idea of when it goes their way, they're quite keen on that. And I just think like I would much rather have a game that wasn't boring, and unfortunately it is. And they had a lot of like really cool rules that were quite in depth, and they removed an awful lot of them to strip the game down, and it's a real shame.
I feel that's a trend. Do you feel that's a trend with like modern gaming where this streamlining and making things quicker and simpler seems to be in vogue?
I'm just sick of people saying, "Oh, the games are simpler now." Like a load of people used to make the argument, "Oh, 40K is way simpler," and like I look at 9th edition and it's like, "Are you sure?" Like I'm always tempted when people say to me, "Oh, I like to play 40K because it's a simpler game," and I'm always tempted to
but
say,
I don't just mean 40K when I'm saying that. I
"Well,
mean
yeah,
gaming in general."
but like I just kind of think like, should we play a game of Fubar using 40K models? And they always say no. Like, why is that? Is it because it's simpler? I just think people think simpler means better. I think that's what it boils down to. An awful lot of people do, and it's not just GW people. There's quite a lot of that in like the sort of like the other games that you get, like your historicals and the people who play like the other games that are like sort of like skirmish like stuff like I was trying to think of a term to describe them, but I'll just mention them, like things like Frostgrave, Stargrave, things of that nature. They tend to be quite simple. This is a very stuck up opinion of mine.
You with a stuck up opinion.
I
Fucking
tend to
Jesus.
regard those as kind of dad rock games design. They're very, very basic and not my thing. I like them in principle, and I could enjoy playing them for a bit, but I would get bored very quickly.
But I think that's why like now is a really good time for gaming, because there is so much choice though. It's like if you want something a bit more nitty gritty and involved, there seems to be games out there for it. If people want streamlined stuff,
I just think
that
in
doesn't
general,
require you being super invested into it. Like I feel there's games out there. There's games that if you wanted to, be your, fucking sun, moon, and stars and get you super involved and super engaged with the community and the whole shebang. Like, there's quite a lot out there. I think
I don't think we've had it better, to be honest. I think like in terms of like options, in terms of access to different things. I mean, like this is a thing I've been wanting to make a YouTube video on, but like I might even chuck it up on my channel, even though it's not really what my channel's for. But I've just been thinking like we've never been this spoilt for choice. Like you've got so many miniature agnostic games coming up, which is really good. You've got all this a decent chunk of the classic spin mold companies are still in business. You can still get like loads of really amazing metal models of any vintage that you would like. There's a whole load of 3D printy people who would like, I grew up on these spin molds. I'm going to make stuff like that. I mean, there's a guy that I spotted in Big Mr. Tongue, I think he's called on Patreon. He's one of the few Patreons I still can afford to have. And like he just makes deliberately like 90s era slaughter based, base slot sculpt miniatures all the time, but all sorts of stuff for any nostalgia shit that you would like. Recently done like the baddies from the fucking Stingray, the Jerry Anderson thing, like the fishmen with and he's done like the fish that you can 3D print and stuff.
was that the puppets is like Sting?
Yeah. But like just like infantry like that, but in the 90s spin mold style.
Fucking love Captain Scarlet.
That was a really good show. But any Jerry Anderson, I've been watching a lot of Jerry Anderson. I think Jerry Anderson is kind of because I've got them on DVD to indulge my nostalgia, and I took up Drop Zone Commander not too long after, and I think I now know why. because it's kind of got that weird futurism but classic aesthetic, especially in Resistance. So I know why I've done it now. That's kind of weird, but like elsewhere with the hobby stuff, you've got all the MDF terrain, you've got 3D printing, you've got all of this really cool stuff. Like
Do you know what I find really funny is like anytime something new comes along, people say like the fucking sky will fall in, but it just gets added into the mix. So like when airbrushes became like accessible and cheaper, I think it was maybe 15 years ago or whatever, when you could start getting airbrushes on the cheap, and you know, people were giving out, oh, you know, it's cheating or whatever. I find that funny. Where something new comes along, there's a resistance to it, and then eventually it just gets added as a toolbox. And the same with like 3D printing.
Yeah,
You know, everyone's like, "Oh, it's gonna revolutionize, and you know, there won't be traditional miniature makers anymore." And it's just
it's a
added
mark.
to it more than anything else.
Yeah, it's been an excellent supplement, but the people who be doing the 3D printing stuff, they want to be careful, right? Because they are in effect oversaturating themselves out of the market. Because there's way too many of them, and they're all like there's a few too many of them that are kind of, they've not got focus. Like the ones who are going to do well are the ones who are obsessed, and they're doing a thing, and they're going to continue to do a thing. They all need to figure out what their niche is and stick with it. There are ones that do it, and I mean, a lot of those ones are also precarious because they're people who are catering to a particular audience, say 40k, for instance, and they want to be a little careful, particularly considering a lot of the other people who do it, especially the ones that I still keep an eye on, are people who are doing stuff for like Star Wars games, like Legion, which are necessary because. And I would like to take this moment, an opportunity to say that the Star Wars Legion character models are almost without exception shit. And you need 3D printed ones that are better because they're always.
You're not impressed with what's on offer, no?
Oh, the Princess Leia is fucking awful. But I have a Princess Leia that I 3D printed, which is actually within reach, so I'm just going to show it.
Hold on. Close cam. But you. I mean, she's white.
Yeah, it's unfortunate she's not going to really be. Well, because my army's a Hoth army. I deliberately make them Hothy based. So I've got all the Hoth stuff. Like I've got Tauntauns. What's the internal temperature of a Tauntaun, everybody? It's lukewarm.
What are we going to say? Womb temperature there.
That's a good one though. And I've got like I've also got like I've put more paint on this one. I've got a Han. When he was out looking for Luke, and then I've got like Luke in his fighter pilot get up, and I've got a helmeted one as well somewhere. Yeah, and just like they're so much better. The character models that you get, some of them are decent, like the Moff Gideon one that came out recently. It's not too bad, and there's a couple of them that are all right. Like the Count Dooku one looks quite nice. Unfortunately, it's an absolute twat to build, and I hate it.
What, the official miniature? Or...
Yeah, and the official one, and I've got a 3D printed one that's just better. So it's just like, and also like the 3D printing people are really doing everything. Like there's a guy that's basically done everything from Shadows of the Empire. It's just like Dash Rendar and all of that. Like, granted, if you don't know your Star Wars novels, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that kind of stuff, and Princess Zora and all that. But the core models are kind of dreadful. They're either not that good to look at, or they've got the visuals quite right.
Horrendous to put together.
But they're either horrendous to put together, or the posing is terrible. Like the Ahsoka they've just done. So they've done an Ahsoka. I think it's supposed to be an older Ahsoka Katano, so it's when she's working for the Rebels rather than when she's Clone Wars era, when she's a bit younger. And it just looks undynamic. It's very, very boring. They could have done so much more with it. And also the Sarge Ventress model that's been shown recently is terrible. Absolutely terrible. like, I don't know what they're doing. They're just phoning it in. Like, it's just so uninspired. Like, I don't know why. And I'm just glad that 3D printing exists. Like,
I mean, that sounds so weird for like a franchise that has such a strong
well, it's
visual
especially
reference to pull from. Like,
yeah, it's especially depressing because now, I mean, I don't know whether or not the productions for the like Asajj Ventress and Ahsoka Kitano was done still under Fantasy Flight before it moved over to Atomic Mass. I don't know if Atomic Mass have got anything to do with making the matches rather than just doing the rules. If they're doing the major production, that's especially depressing because they're the people doing Marvel Crisis Protocol, and those minis look amazing. So I don't know why the Legion stuff's so keenly letting the side down, but the production of the characters is terrible. And I wouldn't care. The rest of the stuff they do, amazing. Like all of the infantry units are really good. Like all of the vehicles are especially good. The vehicle kits are really good. Some of them are a pain in the ass to build. I also collect separatists, the droids, and they're an absolute bastard to build. But they look really nice when they're built. They look really good. And the Darth Grievous, it's not Darth Grievous, it's General Grievous. General Grievous is quite nice looking. It's one of the few that's decent. But he's a robot. You can't really get that wrong. Well, android, but like he's or a cyborg. It's cyborg, isn't it? He's a cyborg because he's part organic. But
he's originally organic and then made metal.
yeah, but like it's kind of a shame really because obviously games like that they are to a very large extent character driven, but a lot of the character models are just very uninspired. It's a real shame because a lot of the rest of it's terrible. As a game though, Legion's a lot of fun. I really rate it as a system.
But the rule set's decent, is it?
Yeah, it's well, I can always criticize anything. I'm good at that, but like, it's one of the more enjoyable systems that I've played. I really, really do like how it plays. Some of it's a bit gimmicky, but you know what? Fucking gimmicks are fine when they're fun, and it's like the way that they move is interesting, and they've made like a movement system that uses movement sticks, but they haven't made it as finicky as they could because they figured out, oh right, so you can just use the finicky movement sticks to position the leader, and then you just position the rest of the squad near them, so you can put them into cover, and it just immediately fixes one of the real issues that I have with moving squads around and finicky movement. It's just through a simple little
having to individually move every dude, yeah.
And
I mean, does it suffer from the same issue that X-Wing does? Because, like, I liked X-Wing, but then the price point for it was fucking ridiculous, man.
It does, but to a much lesser extent, I would say. I think X-Wing's kind of ridiculous at this point, and they've not done anything really to address it. Even the squadron packs are too much. Like they're way too expensive. The people can't afford that, man. It's just ridiculous. I mean, the ships are beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Oh no, it looks like the game looks nice, and I like the mechanics to it.
The game mechanics are some of the crispest in the wargaming industry. They're really, really solid system, very brilliantly future proofed and everything. But
the price point of entry, when I was like, TIE fighters would be sweet, and then I was pricing them up in the local gaming store, and they're like €20 a pop. I'm like, you're all right, bud.
I mean, with TIE fighters, you can get around it because if you buy the starter sets, you get 2 in the starter set, and then you just sell the X-wings to a friend or give them away to a friend, and they'll get X-wings out of it, and you get TIE fighters. That's a good way to get like 8. And the advantage is you never need more than 6 or 8 of a particular ship, and you can just it's a game you can slow burn at. And the advantage it does have is that you don't need to paint anything. It's already painted. You just break it out the box and off you go. And it's good for that. And it's got a solid system and there's a lot of nuance to it. And the dial system is one of the best tactical systems that exists in any game. It is really good. And Legion doesn't quite do that. I mean, Legion's it's a similar boat. You pay a fair bit of money, but you don't need a lot. So even then with Legion, you need even less. Because like Clint was talking about it the other day, he was saying like, you know, it's exactly what it is. You've got like, you need like 3 units and a character, really. You can get by with that. And it's got starter sets. And the starter sets aren't too bad. If you experience as GW, you're going to notice a slight jump, but then the rules are free. I think that's where it sells itself more than anything. Is
Its
that, like,
redeeming quality is that its rules are free.
yeah, you buy the unit, you get the card to use the unit in there. Core rulebook's free. You can download it you can download the PDF. You print it off you go. Wham bam. It's a fun system. They're constantly tailoring it and tweaking it. You use an app for your points, and that's what they do to balance the game. They adjust the points, and you use one of the apps.
You have to pay for the app?
Nope, it's a free app.
A free app? Holy Jesus!
I mean, even better than that. Like the official one, they just stopped bothering with the official one because the fan ones were better. So the fan one, you just use one of the fan ones, and it's the same for Legion and X-Wing. You know they adjust the points as the result of tournaments. So they keep an eye on the tournaments, they adjust the points accordingly, and they tweak the points. And sometimes they make the odd rule change, but the rules changes are very rare in both games. It's just a completely different attitude. Like the FA, you don't really have this FAQ culture. What you tend to have is this like, oh, that ability turned out to be more powerful than we thought, so we're going to jump the points up. Or nobody takes this, let's make it cheaper. One of the things that Atomic Mass did that was interesting is that it like you with X-Wing now you've got a point allowance for upgrades, and you have like 2 separate point systems, because you basically got the point system of you've got 20 points to build your fleet.
Right.
I think it's and well, I say fleet to build your squadron, and it's probably more than 20. I can't remember now. It's actually been quite a while since I played. But you've got like a certain amount of points, and like a good pilot's probably like 6 points, and like a crappy pilot is like sometimes 0, sometimes 1 or 2, right? And you make it from there, and then within, so that's your fleet, and then you've got a point allowance for each individual pilot based on, you know, how much they can modify their ship and add stuff to it, and you spend the points for them within it.
So like a 6-point pilot sounds like a pretty hefty investment then.
It can be. You kind of rely on it, but at the same time, it's fixed one of the core problems I had with an awful lot of the game. Is you would get someone who would come along, they would buy one of the big ships, right? They would throw everything on it and use most of their points on it, and just Death Star kill all of your stuff. And now with the way that the game works, you can't really do that because it can't be most of a list. It does require to have more ships, but the upside of it is that if you take a big thing, you can't throw all of your points at it anymore, because that's not how it works. You get a set amount of points for that ship always, and it'll still have a lot of points on it because it will do, because it's an expensive ship. But the points of your pilot and the ship that they're in is factored in how much they cost. So it's quite a clever way that they've done it. It's good. Legion's more straightforward. You know, it's a point game, and then you've got your minimum core, but your core's dead easy. And it's alternating after activation, and it's random activation. So you've got like discs, and they've got one design on the top that all of your little discs have, and you get them. You get like it's a fantasy flight game, so there's fuck tons of tokens. You got like
of course,
billion tokens in there, and you've got the token for your initiative, and you flip it over, and you can activate any of the units that you have in your army of that type. So there's like a symbol for troop, there's a symbol for a character, there's a symbol for your is it elites and support, I think, are the other ones, and there's one more that I can't think of. It might be scout or something like that.
So how much hobby did you manage to get done in this stream? Because I have based a truckload of mechs. I've done 10, 15, 25. I've put basing material on 28 mechs, so I'm well chuffed. That was some great progress.
I don't know if I can really zoom out or not, but I've been quite productive.
Ooh. Jesus, you have loads of them, you do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I bought 2 starter sets. The price point for Drop Zone's great. There's just like 35 quid for a starter set, and you get a fuck ton of stuff in it. I've just been like, I'm doing my Orky Rust because I don't really know what else to do. So it's like black undercoat. Then I used good old favorite, my best friend, Rough Iron. Then Game Effects Rust in different bits, basically a dry brush, and then a dry brush gunmetal over the top, and then I'm going to actually apply paint, so color and stuff. But I haven't got to that bit yet. But yeah, I've got quite a lot painted, and there's obviously the pie as well. But yeah, I've just been doing like the prep work, I suppose.
Yeah.
Actually add color.
Yeah, I find like the hobby streams are good for that. It's like in order for conversation to actually still flow, you know, the high detailed, intricate work has to be saved for a later date. So like basing
I've learned that lesson on earlier streams, Scar. It's fine.
Yeah. Priming and basing material are you know, the type of painting you want to be doing when you're chatting to someone. Whereas if you're doing stuff like, I don't know, freehanding flags and then picking out missile pods and doing like patterns and stuff like that. Or
I mean, people who freehand flags are fucking mental anyway.
I mean, like, it's only
I hate how talented those people are. Fuck them.
Standards. It's grand. Anyway, we've been running this stream way longer than we expected to. We've been going since 9:15, and it's now nearly 25 past 12. Yeah, we've been going for over 3 hours, man. It's been good crack. Thanks for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the experience. Hopefully, you folks have managed to get a lot of hobby done too. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to see more content, there'll be more coming soon. I'm primarily focused on Battletech, but I do dabble in 40k the odd time, and as you can see, talk about wargaming in general, you know, so it's hobby in general. So subscribe if you like what you see, and if, you know, hit the like button to help with the old algorithm, and we'll see you again soon. So take it easy. See you again, folks. Bye. Buttons.
Figure it out.